Celestial Embrace, A Love Story of Light and Shadows. By Elena Starweaver. Chapter 1. When Stars Collide. The observatory's dome creaked against the autumn wind as Dr. Luna Hartwell adjusted the massive telescope for the third time that evening. Through the eyepiece, the constellation Andromeda sparkled with an ethereal beauty that never failed to take her breath away, even after 15 years of studying the cosmos. Tonight felt different somehow, charged with an energy she couldn't quite explain. "Still here, Luna?" Dr. Marcus Chen's voice echoed through the chamber as he climbed the spiral staircase, his footsteps creating a rhythmic percussion against the metal steps. Steam rose from the 2 coffee cups he carried, creating small clouds in the cool night air. Luna straightened, pushing a strand of dark hair behind her ear. "The meteor shower tonight is supposed to be spectacular. The draconids are at their peak, and with the new moon, visibility should be perfect." She accepted the coffee gratefully, wrapping her fingers around the warm ceramic. "Besides, someone needs to document this for the university's research database." Marcus smiled, settling beside her at the observation deck's railing. As the head of the astrophysics department at Meridian University, he'd grown accustomed to Luna's dedication to her work. What he hadn't grown accustomed to was the way his heart seemed to skip whenever she looked at him with those deep amber eyes, filled with wonder at the universe's mysteries. "You know," he said, gazing up at the star-scattered sky, "sometimes I think you love those stars more than anything else in the world." Luna was quiet for a moment, considering his words. "The stars don't disappoint you. They're constant, predictable. You can calculate their movements, understand their life cycles, map their positions." She paused, taking a sip of coffee. "People are more complicated." "Complicated can be beautiful too," Marcus replied softly. Before Luna could respond, a brilliant streak of light blazed across the sky, followed by another, then another. The Draconid meteor shower had begun in earnest, painting the heavens with trails of cosmic fire. "Oh my goodness," Luna breathed, her scientific composure giving way to pure amazement. "Marcus, look at that one." She pointed to a particularly bright meteor that seemed to hang in the sky longer than the others, its tail shimmering with blues and greens. Without thinking, Marcus moved closer to get a better view from her angle. Their shoulders touched, and Luna felt a warmth that had nothing to do with the coffee. For the first time in years, she found herself more aware of the man beside her than the celestial display above. "Make a wish," Marcus whispered, his breath visible in the cool air. "Astronomers don't make wishes on meteors," Luna replied, but there was no conviction in her voice. "We know they're just cosmic debris burning up in the atmosphere." "Sometimes the most beautiful things are born from debris," Marcus said, turning to look at her profile illuminated by starlight. "Sometimes what appears to be destruction is actually transformation." Luna met his gaze, and for a moment the universe seemed to pause. The meteor shower continued its ancient dance overhead, but neither of them noticed. They were creating their own moment of cosmic significance. "I should document this," Luna said finally, though she made no move toward her equipment. "It's already documented," Marcus replied, tapping his chest over his heart. "Some things are too important to trust to instruments." The wind picked up, causing Luna to shiver. Without hesitation, Marcus shrugged off his jacket and draped it around her shoulders. The gesture was simple, but it spoke of a tenderness that Luna had almost convinced herself didn't exist in her carefully ordered world. "Thank you," she said, pulling the jacket closer. It smelled like him, a mixture of coffee, old books, and something uniquely Marcus that she'd never been able to identify but had always found comforting during their late-night research sessions. They stood in comfortable silence as the meteor shower reached its crescendo. Luna found herself stealing glances at Marcus, noticing things she'd somehow overlooked during their 3 years of working together. The way his eyes crinkled when he smiled. The gentle strength in his hands as he pointed out different constellations. The patience in his voice when he explained complex theories to struggling students. "Luna," Marcus said eventually, his voice carrying a weight that made her turn to face him fully. "I need to tell you something." Her heart began to race, though she couldn't say why. "What is it?" "I've been offered a position at the European Southern Observatory in Chile. It's a dream opportunity, access to some of the most advanced telescopes in the world, unlimited research funding, a chance to work on the next generation of deep space imaging." Luna felt something cold settle in her stomach. "That's wonderful, Marcus. You've always talked about wanting to work there." The words felt like sawdust in her mouth. "I haven't accepted yet." "Why not?" she asked, though part of her desperately wanted to know the answer. Marcus was quiet for a long moment, his eyes fixed on the stars. "Because leaving would mean leaving you, and I've realized that some things matter more than career opportunities." Luna's breath caught. In all her careful calculations and observations, she'd never factored in the possibility that Marcus might feel the same way she'd been trying not to feel for months. "Marcus, You don't have to say anything," he said quickly. "I just needed you to know. Before I make my decision, I needed you to know that you've become the most important part of my universe." Another brilliant meteor streaked across the sky, and this time Luna did make a wish. She wished for the courage to step beyond the safe boundaries of her orderly world and into the beautiful uncertainty of something real. "The offer stands until next month," Marcus continued. "They need an answer by November 15th. Luna nodded, her mind racing. November 15th was exactly 4 weeks away. 4 weeks to figure out if she was brave enough to admit that somewhere between collaborative research projects and shared late-night observations, she'd fallen in love with her colleague. "The shower's starting to fade," she observed, though meteors continued to trace silver paths across the darkness. "Some of the best things are worth waiting for," Marcus replied, and Luna knew he wasn't talking about meteors. As they packed up the equipment and prepared to leave the observatory, Luna couldn't shake the feeling that tonight had been a turning point. The stars she'd always relied on for their predictability had somehow conspired to create a moment of beautiful uncertainty. Walking across the campus toward the parking lot, Marcus's jacket still wrapped around her shoulders, Luna looked up at the sky one more time. The meteors were still falling, though less frequently now. Each one a reminder that sometimes the most spectacular things happened when worlds collided. "Good night, Luna," Marcus said as they reached her car. "Good night," she replied, reluctant to give back his jacket but knowing she should. As she drove home through the quiet streets, Luna's mind kept returning to Marcus's words. Some things matter more than career opportunities. She'd spent her entire adult life prioritizing her career, building walls around her heart with the same precision she used to calibrate telescopes. But tonight, watching meteors paint the sky with fire, she'd felt something shift inside her. The careful distance she'd maintained between herself and Marcus had somehow evaporated in the span of a few hours. Back in her apartment, Luna stood on her small balcony, still wearing Marcus's jacket. The meteor shower was nearly over, but she could still make out the occasional streak of light. She thought about wishes and cosmic debris, about the beauty that could emerge from collision and change. Tomorrow, she decided, she would be brave. Tomorrow, she would tell Marcus that some dreams were worth more than the sum of their individual ambitions. Tomorrow, she would admit that watching meteors with him had been more meaningful than any solitary observation she'd ever made. But tonight, she would stand under the stars and allow herself to feel the full weight of possibility. Tonight, she would let herself imagine a future where love and science weren't mutually exclusive, where two hearts could orbit each other without losing their individual light. The last meteor of the evening blazed across the sky as Luna went inside, and she smiled, thinking that perhaps the universe had a sense of timing after all. Chapter 2: Gravitational Pull. The next morning arrived with the kind of crisp October clarity that made everything seem more vivid. Luna found herself arriving at the university earlier than usual, her mind still processing the events of the previous evening. Marcus's jacket hung in her office closet, a tangible reminder that something fundamental had shifted between them. She was reviewing spectral data when a soft knock interrupted her concentration. Dr. Sarah Williams, her closest friend and colleague in the astronomy department, peeked around the door with a knowing smile. "You left the meteor observation early last night," Sarah said, settling into the chair across from Luna's desk. "That's not like you. Usually, you'd stay until dawn, documenting every possible detail." Luna felt heat rise in her cheeks. "I got enough data for the research database. Sometimes quality is more important than quantity." Sarah raised an eyebrow. "Aha. And the fact that Marcus left at the same time was purely coincidental?" "We walked out together, yes." Luna tried to sound casual while sorting through papers that didn't need sorting. "Luna Hartwell, I've known you for 5 years and I've never seen you this flustered about anything except maybe funding cuts." Sarah leaned forward conspiratorially. "What happened up there?" Luna set down her papers and looked at her friend. Sarah had always been the more social of the two, the one who organized department gatherings and somehow managed to balance a successful research career with a happy marriage and 2 children. If anyone could offer perspective on matters of the heart, it would be Sarah. "He told me about the Chile position," Luna said finally. "Everyone knows about Chile. The question is, what else did he tell you?" Luna hesitated, then found herself recounting the previous evening, the meteor shower of the conversation, the moment when Marcus had essentially laid his heart bare under the stars. "Oh my gosh, Luna!" Sarah exclaimed when she finished. "Marcus Chen is in love with you, and you're sitting here analyzing it like spectral data. What did you say to him?" "I didn't know what to say. This isn't exactly covered in my area of expertise." Sarah laughed, but it was gentle. "Honey, some things don't require expertise. They just require honesty. How do you feel about him?" The question Luna had been avoiding all morning hung in the air between them. How did she feel about Marcus? The safe answer was that he was a valued colleague, a brilliant researcher, someone she respected professionally. The honest answer was far more complicated. "I think," Luna said slowly, "that I've been in love with him for months without admitting it to myself." "Then what's the problem?" "The problem is that love makes people do irrational things. It clouds judgment, affects decision-making. I've seen it happen to brilliant researchers who compromise their careers for relationships that don't last." Sarah was quiet for a moment, then spoke with unusual seriousness. "Luna, I'm going to tell you something and I need you to really hear it. The relationship that doesn't last is the one you don't allow yourself to have because you're too afraid to try." Before Luna could respond, another knock interrupted them. This time it was Marcus himself, looking slightly uncertain as he stood in the doorway. "I hope I'm not interrupting," he said, though his eyes were focused entirely on Luna. "Not at all," Sarah replied, standing and gathering her things with obvious intent. "I was just leaving." "Luna, think about what we discussed." She squeezed Luna's shoulder as she passed Marcus in the doorway. "Morning, Marcus. Beautiful meteor shower last night." "Yes," Marcus replied, still looking at Luna. "It was." After Sarah left, and comfortable silence settled between them, Luna noticed that Marcus seemed less sure of himself than usual, as if the previous evening's revelation had left him feeling exposed. "I brought you something," he said, producing a small wrapped package from behind his back. Luna accepted it curiously, unwrapping it to reveal a beautiful leather-bound journal. The cover was embossed with a constellation map, and when she opened it, she found an inscription on the first page, "For documenting the things that matter most." "Marcus, this is beautiful." "But I can't." "Yes, you can," he said firmly. "Luna, about last night. I don't want you to feel pressured. I told you how I felt because I needed you to know, not because I expected anything in return." Luna set the journal on her desk, her fingers tracing the constellation pattern. What if I wanted to give something in return? Marcus's eyes widened slightly. What do you mean? I mean that maybe I've been so focused on maintaining professional boundaries that I forgot to pay attention to what was happening right in front of me. She looked up at him, finding courage in his hopeful expression. I mean that watching meteors with you last night was the most perfect evening I've had in years. Marcus stepped closer to her desk. Luna, are you saying? I'm saying that if you turn down the chilly position because of me, I need you to be sure it's what you want. Not what you think I want, but what you want. What I want, Marcus said, moving around the desk until he was standing directly in front of her, is to see where this leads. What I want is to have coffee with you that isn't about work, to take you to dinner somewhere without discussing research proposals, to hold your hand while we watch the sunrise. Luna felt her heart hammering against her ribs. That sounds terrifyingly wonderful. Marcus smiled, not his polite colleague smile but something warmer and more genuine. Would you like to start with coffee? There's a place downtown that supposedly has the best pastries in the city. Are you asking me on a date, Dr. Chen? I am, Dr. Hartwell. A real honest-to-goodness, non-professional date. Luna looked at the journal he'd given her, then at Marcus's hopeful face, then at the window where morning sunshine was streaming through the blinds. Outside, students were walking across the campus quad, carrying backpacks and coffee cups, chatting with friends, living their lives with a kind of openness Luna had always envied but never quite managed. Yes, she said, the word coming out stronger than she'd expected. I would love to have coffee with you. How about Saturday morning? Around 10? It's a date, Luna replied, then blushed at her own boldness. Marcus was halfway to the door when he turned back. Luna, thank you for being brave enough to say yes. After he left, Luna sat alone in her office, holding the journal and trying to process what had just happened. In the span of 12 hours, her carefully ordered world had been turned upside down, and instead of feeling panicked, she felt alive. She opened the journal to the first blank page, and after a moment's hesitation began to write. October 15th, the Draconid meteor shower peaked last night. Approximately 15 to 20 meteors per hour observed at peak activity. More importantly, I discovered that some collisions create light rather than destruction. Note to self, investigate the possibility that falling can sometimes mean rising. The rest of the day passed in a blur of routine activities that felt anything but routine. Luna found herself smiling during faculty meetings, humming while she graded papers, and checking her reflection in every available surface. When colleagues asked about her unusually cheerful mood, she attributed it to successful meteor observations. Friday evening found her standing in front of her closet, staring at an array of professional blazers and wondering what one wore on a first date at 32. She'd been on dates before, of course, but they'd all been with men from outside academia, relationships that had fizzled when her partners couldn't understand her passion for spending nights alone with telescopes. This was different. Marcus understood her work because he shared the same passion. He knew why she got excited about spectral analysis, and why she'd rather spend New Year's Eve at the observatory than at a party. The question was whether they could translate professional compatibility into personal connection. Her phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. How are you feeling about tomorrow? Need a pep talk or fashion advice? Luna typed back, both. Meet me for dinner? I may be having a minor panic attack. 30 minutes later, they were sitting in a quiet corner booth at their favorite restaurant, and Luna was explaining her sudden crisis of confidence. I know how to talk to Marcus about pulsar frequencies and galactic rotation curves, she said, twirling pasta around her fork without actually eating it. But what do we talk about when we're not being Dr. Chen and Dr. Hartwell? You talk about the same things you've always talked about, just without the professional filter, Sarah replied. Luna, you and Marcus have been friends for 3 years. The only thing that's changing is that you're both admitting there's something more there. What if there isn't, though? What if we try this and it ruins everything? We'd still have to work together, serve on committees together, present research together. Sarah set down her wine glass and looked at Luna seriously. Honey, what if it works? What if you're so busy protecting yourself from potential hurt that you miss out on potential happiness? Luna considered this while finally taking a bite of her dinner. When did relationships become so complicated? They've always been complicated. The difference is that now you're emotionally invested in the outcome. Sarah smiled. That's not a bad thing, Luna. It means you're finally letting yourself want something beyond professional achievement. I've wanted things before. Have you? Really? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you've spent the last decade convinced that caring about someone means compromising your career. Luna was quiet, recognizing the truth in Sarah's words. Since graduate school, she'd approached relationships with the same caution she applied to handling delicate equipment, careful, measured, ready to pull back at the first sign of potential damage. Marcus is worth the risk, Sarah continued. You know it, or you wouldn't be this scared. Luna nodded slowly. I just don't want to mess this up. Then don't overthink it. Tomorrow morning, just be yourself. The self that gets excited about meteor showers and can explain the birth of stars with more passion than most people talk about their hobbies. That's the person he's falling in love with. As Luna drove home that evening, she felt some of her anxiety begin to settle. Sarah was right. Marcus already knew her, had already seen her at her most passionate and professional and awkward. If he wanted to explore something beyond their work relationship, it was because he liked the person she already was. She spent Saturday morning getting ready with unusual care, choosing a simple sweater and jeans that were nice enough for a date, but comfortable enough to feel like herself. As she walked toward the coffee shop, Luna caught herself looking up at the clear October sky and thinking about gravity. How it could pull objects together across vast distances, how it was both a force of attraction and a fundamental law of physics. Perhaps love operated on similar principles. Perhaps some connections were simply inevitable, written in the stars long before the people involved recognized them. Marcus was already waiting when she arrived, and the smile that spread across his face when he saw her made Luna's remaining nervousness dissolve like morning mist. Ready for this? He asked, offering her his arm. Ready, Luna replied, and for the first time in years she meant it completely. Chapter 3: Orbital Mechanics. The coffee shop Marcus had chosen was a small, intimate place called Starlight Cafe, a detail that wasn't lost on either of them. Vintage astronomy books lined the shelves, and constellation maps decorated the walls between windows that let in streams of golden October sunlight. Luna couldn't have picked a more perfect setting if she tried. This is lovely, she said as Marcus pulled out her chair. How did you find it? I've been coming here for about a year, he admitted, settling across from her. Always alone, usually with papers to grade. I kept thinking it would be nice to share it with someone someday. The casual honesty of his comment made Luna's heart skip. She was learning that Marcus had a way of saying meaningful things without making them feel heavy or overwhelming. Their conversation began tentatively, both of them seemingly aware that they were navigating new territory. But gradually, as they shared stories over coffee and pastries, Luna began to relax. Marcus told her about growing up in San Francisco, about parents who'd wanted him to be a doctor, until they realized he was going to study the stars whether they approved or not. She found herself sharing memories of her childhood in rural Montana, where the absence of light pollution had first sparked her love affair with the night sky. I used to sneak out of the house after my parents went to sleep, Luna confessed, warming her hands around her coffee cup. I'd take an old blanket and lie in the backyard for hours, just staring up at the Milky Way. My parents thought I was going through a rebellious phase when they caught me. Marcus laughed. In a way, you were. Choosing to pursue astronomy as a career is pretty rebellious when you consider how few people really understand what we do. Do you ever miss it? The simplicity of just looking up and wondering? Sometimes, Marcus said thoughtfully. But then I remember that understanding something doesn't make it less beautiful. Knowing that those points of light are massive fusion reactors burning across impossible distances, that makes them more miraculous, not less. Luna studied his face as he spoke, noting the passion that animated his features. This was the Marcus she'd fallen in love with, the one who could find wonder in scientific explanation, who saw poetry in mathematics. "Can I ask you something?" she said suddenly. "Anything." "Why Chile? I mean, I know it's an incredible opportunity, but what drew you to that specific position?" Marcus was quiet for a moment, stirring his coffee absently. "Honestly, I applied because I thought it would be easier than staying here." "Easier? How?" "Easier than watching you every day and pretending I didn't want more. Easier than sitting in faculty meetings and thinking about holding your hand instead of listening to budget discussions. Easier than lying awake at night wondering if you could ever feel the same way." Luna felt something warm and bright unfold in her chest. "For the record, I was doing plenty of lying awake myself." "Really? Really? Sarah caught me staring at you during the department barbecue last month. I tried to convince her I was thinking about your research on binary star systems, but she saw right through me." Marcus grinned. "Binary stars are a good metaphor, actually. Two objects orbiting around a common center, bound together by gravitational force, each maintaining their individual identity while creating something stable and beautiful together." "Is that what you want?" Luna asked softly. "Something stable and beautiful? With you?" "Yes. Absolutely yes." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, watching other patrons come and go. Luna noticed an elderly couple at a corner table, sharing a newspaper and occasionally reading interesting bits aloud to each other. She wondered if she and Marcus might look like that someday, comfortable in their shared space, still finding things to discover together after years of companionship. "So what happens now?" she asked. "Now we figure it out as we go," Marcus replied. "I'd like to take you to dinner next Friday, if you're free. Somewhere nice where we can talk more. And maybe you'd let me cook for you sometime. I make a pretty decent stir-fry." Luna smiled at the nervousness that crept into his voice. It was endearing to see confident, accomplished Dr. Chen worrying about whether his cooking was good enough. "I'd love both of those things," she said. "But Marcus, about the Chile position." His expression grew more serious. "What about it?" "I don't want to be the reason you turn down your dream job. If this doesn't work out between us, I'd hate for you to have missed that opportunity because of me." Marcus reached across the table and gently covered her hand with his. It was the first time they'd touched since he'd given her his jacket, and Luna felt a little thrill at the contact. "Luna, that position isn't going anywhere. Similar opportunities will come up again. But this feels like something that happens once in a lifetime." "How can you be so sure?" "Because in 3 years of working together, I've never met anyone who understands the universe the way you do. You see patterns where other people see chaos, find beauty in mathematical equations, get excited about things that most people can't even pronounce." His thumb traced gently across her knuckles. "Because when you smile at a particularly elegant solution to a complex problem, it's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen." Luna felt tears prick at her eyes, happy tears she realized with some surprise. "You can't say things like that to me in public places," she whispered. "I'm going to cry in a coffee shop. Would it help if I told you that you have a small smudge of chocolate on your cheek?" Luna laughed, reaching for her napkin, but Marcus stopped her. "May I?" She nodded, and he gently brushed the chocolate away with his thumb. The gesture was simple, intimate, and completely devastating to Luna's composure. "There," he said softly. "Perfect." They spent the rest of the morning talking about everything and nothing. Favorite books, travel dreams, embarrassing graduate school stories, the colleagues who drove them crazy at faculty meetings. Luna discovered that Marcus had wanted to be a pianist before he discovered astronomy, that he still played when he needed to think through complex problems. Marcus learned that Luna wrote poetry in the margins of her research notes when she was stuck on a particularly challenging calculation. "Poetry?" he asked, delighted. "Can I read some of it sometime?" "Absolutely not," Luna replied firmly. "It's terrible poetry. Like embarrassingly bad. I'm talking about rhyming stellar with cellular and thinking I'm clever." "I love that you do that," Marcus said. "I love that you need a creative outlet for your scientific brain." As they prepared to leave, Luna felt reluctant to let the morning end. She'd forgotten how nice it could be to spend time with someone who genuinely wanted to know her thoughts, who listened to her stories with real interest rather than just waiting for their turn to talk. "Walk with me?" Marcus asked as they stepped outside. They strolled through downtown, past shop windows displaying autumn decorations and early Halloween displays. The conversation continued to flow easily, punctuated by comfortable silences when they simply enjoyed each other's company. "Luna," Marcus said as they reached her car, "I want you to know that whatever happens with us, I'm glad we're trying. I'm glad you said yes to coffee." "Me too," she replied. "Even if I'm terrified." "Terrified of what?" Luna considered the question seriously. "Terrified of caring about someone more than I care about protecting myself. Terrified of finding something wonderful and then somehow losing it. Terrified of being brave enough to want this and not brave enough to keep it." Marcus was quiet for a moment, then said, "You know what terrifies me? The idea that I might have spent the rest of my life wondering, what if? The idea that I might have been too scared to tell you how I felt, and missed out on the possibility of everything." Luna looked up at him, this man who had somehow become the center of her carefully ordered universe without her even realizing it was happening. "When you put it like that, it seems foolish not to try." "Exactly," Marcus said, smiling. "Besides, we're scientists. We're trained to test hypotheses. Think of this as the most important experiment we've ever conducted." "What's our hypothesis?" "That two people who understand the mechanics of orbital motion can figure out how to orbit each other without losing themselves in the process." Luna laughed. "That might be the most romantic thing anyone has ever said to me." "Good," Marcus replied. "Because I have a lot more where that came from." As Luna drove home, she found herself thinking about orbital mechanics, the delicate balance of forces that kept celestial bodies in stable relationships. Too little gravitational pull and objects drifted apart, too much and they collided destructively. But when the balance was right, when the forces were perfectly calibrated, objects could dance around each other for millions of years, each maintaining their individual identity while creating something beautiful together. She pulled into her driveway and sat in the car for a moment, looking up at the clear blue sky. Somewhere up there, invisible in the daylight, were all the stars she'd spent years studying. Tonight she would see them again, would point her telescope toward familiar constellations, and continue her work of mapping the universe. But for the first time in years, she was looking forward to something beyond her research. She was looking forward to Friday dinner, to the sound of Marcus's laugh, to the possibility of discovering that love and science weren't mutually exclusive after all. Inside her apartment, Luna opened the journal Marcus had given her and wrote, October 16th, Hypothesis: two scientists can successfully navigate the transition from professional colleagues to romantic partners without compromising their individual careers or emotional well-being. Initial data suggests hypothesis may be correct. Further observation required. Note: subject appears to have extensive knowledge of romantic coffee shop locations. This may prove advantageous for future research. She closed the journal, smiling at her own scientific approach to documenting their relationship. Some things she was learning were too important not to document carefully. Chapter 4: Eclipse of the Heart. The week between their coffee date and Friday dinner passed with unusual awareness on Luna's part. She found herself noticing Marcus in ways she'd trained herself not to before. The way he gestured when explaining complex theories to students, how he always held doors for colleagues, the fact that he seemed to time his coffee breaks to coincide with hers. "You're glowing," Sarah observed on Thursday afternoon as they walked across campus together. "Actually, glowing. It's kind of disgusting how happy you look." Luna laughed. "I wouldn't say I'm glowing. Maybe just luminous? Whatever you want to call it, it's working for you. Marcus looks pretty starry-eyed himself these days. Yesterday, I caught him humming during the budget committee meeting." "Humming, Luna? At a budget meeting?" "We're going to dinner tomorrow night," Luna confided. "Somewhere nice," he said. "I have no idea what to wear." "Wear the blue dress. The one you bought for the astronomy conference last year and then decided was too nice to actually wear." Luna knew exactly which dress Sarah meant, a midnight blue sheath that had been an impulse purchase hanging in her closet with the tag still on. That might be too much for a second date. "Trust me," Sarah said firmly. "Wear the dress." Friday evening found Luna standing before her bathroom mirror, applying makeup with more care than she'd taken in months. The blue dress fit perfectly, elegant without being over-dramatic, and she'd paired it with simple jewelry and low heels. When Marcus knocked on her door at exactly 7 o'clock, the expression on his face told her that Sarah's advice had been correct. "You look absolutely beautiful," he said, offering her his arm. "Thank you. You look pretty wonderful yourself." Marcus had traded his usual academic casual wear for a dark suit that made his eyes look even more striking. Luna noticed he'd gotten a haircut since their coffee date, and the subtle cologne he wore was making it difficult for her to think clearly. The restaurant he'd chosen was small and intimate, with dim lighting and a menu that actually made Luna's mouth water. As the hostess led them to a corner table, Marcus leaned close enough for her to feel his breath against her ear. "I may have called ahead to make sure they had a table with a good view of the sky," he whispered. Luna looked up through the large windows beside their table and saw the first stars beginning to appear in the twilight. "You didn't have to do that." "Yes, I did," Marcus replied, pulling out her chair. "I wanted tonight to be perfect." As they settled into dinner conversation, Luna was struck by how natural this felt. The nervousness from their coffee date had evolved into something warmer, anticipation mixed with growing comfort. Marcus asked about her current research project, and she found herself explaining her work on stellar formation with the kind of enthusiasm usually reserved for academic conferences. "So you're essentially trying to understand how chaos becomes order," Marcus summarized after she'd finished describing her latest findings. "In very simple terms, yes. How random cosmic material organizes itself into something as precise and beautiful as a star system. It's fascinating that something so fundamental to the universe's structure is still not completely understood." Luna nodded, taking a sip of wine. "That's what I love about astronomy. We're constantly discovering that we know less than we thought we did." "Is that what drew you to stellar formation specifically?" Luna considered the question. "I think I'm drawn to beginnings. The moment when potential becomes reality, when possibility crystallizes into something concrete." She paused, realizing how her words might sound. "I suppose that applies to more than just stars." Marcus met her eyes across the table. "I hope so." Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of their entrees, but the mood Marcus had created with those two simple words lingered throughout the meal. Luna found herself studying his face in the candlelight, memorizing details she'd somehow missed during 3 years of professional interaction. "Can I ask you something?" Marcus said as they shared dessert. Of course. What changed for you? Between the meteor shower and coffee last Saturday, something shifted. I could see it in your eyes. Luna set down her fork, considering how to answer honestly. I think I realized that I'd been so afraid of disrupting my carefully planned life that I was missing out on actually living it. What do you mean? I mean that I've spent the last decade treating my personal life like a controlled experiment. Minimize variables, avoid unpredictable elements, maintain strict protocols to prevent contamination. She smiled ruefully. But life isn't a laboratory, is it? The best discoveries happen when you're brave enough to venture into uncharted territory. Marcus reached across the table and took her hand. For what it's worth, I think you're the bravest person I know. Brave? Marcus, I've been hiding from this for months. I've been the opposite of brave. You've been cautious. There's a difference. And now you're here, taking a chance on something that could change everything. That's brave. Luna felt that familiar flutter in her chest, the one that seemed to happen whenever Marcus looked at her with complete sincerity. What about you? What made you decide to risk our working relationship? Honestly, the realization that I was already risking it by pretending I didn't have feelings for you. I was starting to make excuses to avoid being alone with you, declining opportunities to collaborate because I didn't trust myself to maintain professional boundaries. Marcus's thumb traced across her knuckles. That seemed like a much worse outcome than finding out whether you might feel the same way. And if I hadn't? If I'd said no to coffee? Then I would have respected that, finished out the semester with as much dignity as I could manage, and accepted the chilly position with a clear conscience. Luna squeezed his hand. I'm glad we didn't have to find out how that story ended. Me too. As they prepared to leave the restaurant, Marcus helped Luna with her coat, his hands lingering on her shoulders for a moment longer than necessary. The simple touch sent warmth spreading through her entire body. Walk with me? He asked, echoing his invitation from their coffee date. They strolled through the downtown area, past shop windows and under streetlights, their conversation shifting from work to dreams to the kind of philosophical questions that seemed natural under starlight. Do you think we would have found each other if we weren't both astronomers? Luna asked as they paused beside a small park. I think some connections transcend circumstance, Marcus replied. I think we would have recognized each other somehow, even if we'd met in completely different contexts. That's a very romantic way of looking at it. I'm feeling very romantic tonight, Marcus admitted. Being with you like this, without professional obligations or academic pressures, it's like seeing you for the first time. Luna turned to face him fully, studying his expression in the soft glow of the park's lighting. Marcus, can I tell you something? Anything. I used to think that falling in love would make me feel out of control, like I was losing pieces of myself. She took a step closer to him. But being with you makes me feel more like myself than I ever have before. Marcus's eyes widened slightly. Luna, are you saying? I'm saying that I love you, she said, the words coming out with surprising steadiness. I love your passion for your work, your kindness to struggling students, the way you find wonder in everything from quasars to quantum mechanics. I love that you bought me a journal for documenting important moments, and that you picked a restaurant where we could see the stars. Marcus was quiet for a moment, and Luna felt a flutter of panic. Had she said too much too soon? But then he smiled, the kind of smile that seemed to light up the entire park. I love you too, he said simply. I think I've loved you since the first time you explained binary star evolution with so much enthusiasm that you forgot to eat your lunch. Luna laughed, remembering the faculty meeting he was referencing. That was 2 years ago. I know. I've been very patient. Before Luna could respond, Marcus stepped closer, his hands coming up to frame her face gently. May I kiss you? Instead of answering with words, Luna rose on her toes and closed the distance between them. The kiss was soft, tentative at first, then deeper as they both seemed to realize that this moment had been building for much longer than either of them had admitted. When they finally broke apart, Luna felt dizzy with happiness. "That was perfect," Marcus finished. "That was absolutely perfect." They stood there for a moment, foreheads touching, breathing the same air, and marveling at how much their world had changed in the span of a single kiss. "What happens now?" Luna asked, echoing her question from their coffee date. "Now I walk you home," Marcus said, offering her his arm again. "And tomorrow, if you're free, I'd like to take you to the farmer's market. I want to buy you flowers and hold your hand in public and do all the wonderfully ordinary things that people in love do." "I would love that," Luna replied. "All of it." As they walked toward Luna's apartment, she felt a sense of completeness she'd never experienced before. The stars were beginning to appear in earnest now, and she found herself thinking about light, how it traveled across impossible distances to reach Earth, how the light from some stars had been traveling for millions of years before human eyes could perceive it. "Marcus," she said as they reached her front door, "about the chilly position." "Luna, please don't." "Let me finish," she said gently. "I've been thinking about it all week, and I want you to know that whatever you decide, I'll support you. If you want to take the position, we'll figure out how to make a long-distance relationship work. If you want to stay, I'll do everything I can to make sure you don't regret it." Marcus was quiet for a long moment. "What would you do if you were in my position?" Luna considered the question seriously. 6 months ago, I would have said take the job without question. Career first, always. But now I think I'd choose love. I'd choose the possibility of building something beautiful with someone who understands my passion for the stars. Even if it meant potentially limiting career opportunities. "Some opportunities are worth more than others," Luna said, thinking of their conversation at the restaurant. "Some beginnings are worth more than individual achievements." Marcus smiled and leaned down to kiss her forehead. "I'll call them Monday morning and officially decline the position." "Are you sure?" "I've never been more sure of anything in my life." Luna stood on her tiptoes and kissed him again, pouring all of her gratitude and love and hope for their future into the gesture. When they separated, both of them were breathing unsteadily. "Good night, Luna," Marcus said softly. "Good night, Marcus. Sweet dreams." Inside her apartment, Luna stood at her window looking up at the night sky. The stars seemed brighter tonight, more vivid, as if the universe was celebrating along with her. She thought about stellar formation, about how cosmic material came together under just the right conditions to create something that could burn brightly for billions of years. She opened her journal and wrote, October 22nd, major breakthrough in ongoing research project. Hypothesis confirmed. 2 scientists can successfully navigate transition from colleagues to romantic partners. Additional discovery. Love does not diminish individual identity, but rather enhances it. Subject's decision to decline chilly position represents significant data point. Conclusion. Some orbital mechanics are worth more than career advancement. Note, subject is an excellent kisser. This may prove advantageous for future research. Luna closed the journal and smiled, thinking that she'd never been more excited about a research project in her entire life. Chapter 5, A New Constellation. 6 months later, Luna stood in the university's main auditorium, adjusting her presentation slides one final time before the Spring Astronomy Symposium began. Her research on stellar formation had reached a breakthrough point, and today she would be presenting her findings to colleagues from universities across the country. "Nervous?" Marcus asked, appearing beside her with 2 cups of coffee. "Excited," Luna corrected, accepting the coffee gratefully. "This research has the potential to change how we understand early stellar development. 6 months ago, I was stuck on a theoretical problem that seemed unsolvable. What changed? Marcus asked, though his smile suggested he already knew the answer. I learned that sometimes the most beautiful discoveries happen when you're brave enough to let two separate elements interact in new ways. Marcus leaned close enough that only she could hear his next words. Is that your scientific way of saying that falling in love improved your research? Luna grinned. Maybe. I'll let you know after I finish analyzing the data. The past 6 months had been a whirlwind of discovery, both professional and personal. True to his word, Marcus had declined the Chile position, a decision that had initially worried Luna despite her support for it. But watching him throw himself into new research projects at Meridian, seeing the excitement in his eyes when he talked about their collaborative work on binary star systems, had convinced her that he'd made the right choice. Their relationship had developed with the same natural progression as their first coffee date. They'd spent weekends exploring farmers' markets and hiking trails, evenings cooking together in Marcus's kitchen while discussing everything from quantum mechanics to their favorite childhood books. Luna had even played some of her terrible poetry for him, which had resulted in Marcus composing an equally terrible song about gravitational waves on his piano. 5 minutes until you're on, Sarah announced, appearing beside them with her own coffee and a slightly frazzled expression. The auditorium is packed. Word got out that Dr. Luna Hartwell has made a significant breakthrough, and everyone wants to hear about it. Luna felt a familiar flutter of nerves, but it was the good kind, the kind that came with anticipation rather than anxiety. Any other colleagues I should know about in the audience? Dr. Rebecca Martinez from Stanford is here. She's the one whose work on stellar composition you've been citing. Oh, and there's a contingent from the European Southern Observatory. Marcus and Luna exchanged glances. Chile? She asked quietly. Probably, Marcus replied. Does that bother you? Luna considered the question seriously. No, I don't think it does. 6 months ago, the presence of ESO representatives would have made me worry that you might regret your decision. Now I'm just curious to hear what they think of our research. Our research? The binary star work we've been collaborating on shows up in my stellar formation conclusions. This is as much your presentation as mine. Marcus's smile was soft and proud. I love that our work lives complement each other. And I love that our work lives enhance each other rather than competing, Luna replied. Places, everyone, the symposium coordinator called. Dr. Hartwell, you're on in 2 minutes. Luna handed her empty coffee cup to Marcus and straightened her blazer. She'd chosen to wear the midnight blue dress from their first dinner date, partly for luck, and partly because Marcus had mentioned that morning how much he loved seeing her in blue. Break a leg, Marcus said, kissing her cheek. Not literally, though. We have dinner reservations tonight. Right, our 6-month anniversary dinner, Luna said, then paused. Wait, are you nervous about something? You've been fidgety all morning. Just excited to celebrate how far we've come, Marcus replied, but something in his expression made Luna suspect there was more to it. Before she could ask, the coordinator was gesturing for her to take the stage. Luna walked to the podium with confidence, looking out at the sea of faces, colleagues, students, researchers whose work she'd admired for years. In the third row, Marcus sat beaming at her with unconcealed pride. Good morning, Luna began, her voice carrying clearly through the auditorium. 6 months ago, I was working on a theoretical model for stellar formation that seemed to have reached an impasse. The mathematics suggested that certain types of cosmic material should be able to form stable stellar systems, but we lacked observational evidence to support this hypothesis. She clicked to her first slide, showing a star chart with several marked areas. What I'd like to share with you today is the discovery of 3 new stellar formation regions that not only support this theoretical model, but suggest that stellar birth is far more dynamic and interactive than we previously understood. For the next 45 minutes, Luna presented her research with the kind of passion and clarity that had first drawn Marcus to her. She walked through mathematical models, showed spectral analysis data, and presented observational evidence that painted a picture of cosmic creation that was both more complex and more beautiful than existing theories suggested. The implications of this research extend beyond stellar formation itself, Luna concluded. What we're seeing is evidence that the universe tends toward collaboration rather than competition, that the most stable and long-lasting stellar systems form when separate elements work together rather than in isolation. The applause was immediate and sustained. Luna saw colleagues leaning forward in their seats, taking notes, already formulating questions about methodology and implications. In the third row, Marcus was applauding with obvious enthusiasm, and Luna felt a surge of gratitude for his unwavering support. The question and answer session that followed was energetic and productive. Dr. Martinez asked several thoughtful questions about spectral analysis techniques. A graduate student from MIT wanted to know about potential applications for deep space observation. And yes, the ESO representatives had multiple questions about observational methods and whether Luna would be interested in pursuing this research with access to more advanced telescopes. Dr. Hartwell, the final questioner, began, a distinguished man Luna recognized as Dr. James Norton from the Harvard-Smithsonian Center for Astrophysics. Your research suggests a fundamental shift in how we understand cosmic collaboration. Do you see applications for this theory beyond stellar formation? Luna smiled, thinking about the past 6 months of her life. I think collaboration and mutual enhancement are fundamental forces throughout the universe, Dr. Norton. From the smallest quantum interactions to the largest galactic structures, we see evidence that systems become stronger and more stable when individual elements work together while maintaining their distinct properties. And in your professional opinion, this model could be applied to other types of partnerships? Luna glanced at Marcus, who was watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read. I believe so, yes. I think the most beautiful and sustainable systems, whether cosmic or otherwise, are built on the principle that collaboration enhances rather than diminishes individual strength. As the symposium concluded and colleagues began approaching with follow-up questions and collaboration proposals, Luna felt a profound sense of satisfaction. Her research had been well received, potentially groundbreaking in its implications, and she'd managed to present it clearly and confidently. More importantly, she'd done it while knowing that Marcus was in the audience supporting her, that they had dinner plans to celebrate, and that her professional success felt even sweeter because she had someone to share it with. It took nearly an hour to extricate herself from post-presentation conversations, but finally Luna found herself walking across campus with Marcus, the late afternoon sun casting long shadows across the quad. So, Marcus said, how does it feel to be the scientist who revolutionized stellar formation theory? It feels like the beginning of something rather than the end, Luna replied. 3 universities have already approached me about collaborative research opportunities. Dr. Martinez wants to work together on spectral analysis methods. And the ESO people, she trailed off, looking at Marcus uncertainly. The ESO people what? They offered me a research position. Similar to the one you turned down, but focused on stellar formation rather than deep space imaging. Marcus stopped walking. Luna, that's incredible. That's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. It is, she agreed. It's also 9,000 miles away from here. They stood in the middle of the campus quad, students walking around them, the normal bustle of university life continuing while Luna and Marcus faced a decision that could change everything. What did you tell them? Marcus asked quietly. I told them I needed to discuss it with my research partner. Marcus's eyebrows rose. Research partner? Well, colleague. Boyfriend. The person whose opinion matters most to me when I'm making life-changing decisions. Luna stepped closer to him. Marcus, 6 months ago I would have said yes immediately. Career first always. But now I want to know what you think. I want to know if there's a way to make this work for both of us, or if it's something I should turn down. Marcus was quiet for a long moment, his expression thoughtful. Luna, can I ask you to trust me about something? Of course. Trust me enough to say yes to dinner tonight before we make any major life decisions? Luna studied his face, noting the nervous energy she'd observed that morning. Marcus Chen, are you planning something? I'm planning to celebrate 6 months with the most incredible woman I've ever known, he replied. Everything else can wait until after dessert. Luna laughed, feeling some of her anxiety about the ESO offer dissolve. Okay. Dinner first, life-changing decisions second. Exactly. The restaurant Marcus had chosen for their anniversary dinner was the same place they'd had their first official date, and Luna felt a warm sense of coming full circle as they were seated at their original table by the window. 6 months ago I was terrified, Luna said as they settled into their seats. Terrified of caring about someone more than my work, terrified of disrupting my carefully planned life. And now I can't imagine my life without you in it. Luna reached across the table and took his hand. Marcus, about the ESO offer. Luna, wait. Marcus's voice carried a nervousness that made her pause. Before we talk about Chile, I have something I need to ask you. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small velvet box, setting it gently on the table between them. Luna's breath caught. Marcus, 6 months ago, you taught me that some discoveries are worth more than individual achievements, Marcus said, his voice steady despite the emotion in his eyes. You taught me that collaboration can make us stronger rather than weaker, that love doesn't diminish our individual light but makes it shine brighter. Luna felt tears beginning to well up as Marcus opened the box to reveal a stunning ring, a sapphire surrounded by small diamonds arranged in the pattern of the constellation Andromeda. Luna Hartwell, Marcus continued, you are the most brilliant, passionate, beautiful person I've ever known. You're my favorite research partner, my best friend, and the love of my life. Would you do me the honor of marrying me? Luna stared at the ring, at Marcus's hopeful face, at the constellation pattern that represented their shared love of the stars. Marcus, it's perfect. But what about Chile? Marcus smiled. That's the best part. I called ESO this afternoon, after your presentation. I asked if they might be interested in a joint research proposal, stellar formation and deep space imaging, combining both of our specialties. They're very interested. You mean? I mean that if you want to say yes to their offer, I'd like to come with you. As your fiancé, your research partner and your fellow astronomer. Marcus's voice grew softer. I mean that I want to explore the universe with you, Luna. All of it, the professional discoveries and the personal adventures and everything in between. Luna felt overwhelmed by the magnitude of what Marcus was offering, not just marriage, but a true partnership that honored both their careers and their love for each other. Yes, she said, the word coming out as barely a whisper. Yes. Yes, I'll marry you. Yes, I want to explore the universe with you. Yes to all of it. Marcus's smile was radiant as he slipped the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly, catching the restaurant's soft lighting and throwing tiny rainbows across the table. I love you, Dr. Hartwell, Marcus said, leaning across the table to kiss her. I love you too, Dr. Chen. Though I suppose we'll need to figure out what to call ourselves professionally once we're married. I was thinking Dr. and Dr. Chen Hartwell has a nice ring to it. Luna laughed, admiring the way her engagement ring looked on her hand. That works for me. We can hyphenate our names and our research. As they celebrated over dinner, Luna found herself thinking about stellar formation, about how cosmic material came together under exactly the right conditions to create something that could burn brightly for billions of years. She thought about collaboration and gravitational pull, about the delicate balance required to maintain a stable orbit while still allowing for growth and change. "Marcus," she said as they shared dessert, "do you think we would have found each other if we weren't both astronomers?" "I think we would have recognized each other somehow," Marcus replied, echoing his words from months earlier. "But I'm grateful we found each other this way, in a world where we both understand why someone would spend their life studying the stars." Luna squeezed his hand, feeling the weight of her new ring and the lightness of unlimited possibility. "I can't wait to study the Chilean sky with you. I can't wait to wake up next to you under Southern Hemisphere constellations." As they walked home through the downtown area where they'd shared their first kiss, Luna looked up at the familiar stars of the Northern Hemisphere. Soon she'd be seeing different constellations, mapping new areas of the sky, contributing to humanity's understanding of the universe from a completely different perspective. But she wouldn't be doing it alone. She'd be doing it with Marcus, her partner in research and in life, the person who understood that love and science weren't competing forces but complementary ones. That night, Luna opened her journal and wrote, March 15th, major developments in multiple research areas. Stellar formation theory successfully presented and well received by colleagues. New collaborative opportunities identified. Most significant discovery: subject proposed marriage using ring designed in Andromeda constellation pattern. Hypothesis confirmed beyond all doubt: love enhances rather than detracts from scientific achievement. Conclusion: some partnerships are written in the stars. Future research to be conducted in Chilean observatories with full collaboration from subject. Note: planning a wedding while preparing for international relocation may present interesting logistical challenges. Further data collection required. Luna closed the journal and looked out her window at the stars, thinking about new beginnings and cosmic collaboration, about the beautiful complexity of building a life with someone who shared your passion for understanding the universe. In a few months, she'd be Dr. Luna Chen Hartwell, conducting groundbreaking research under Southern Hemisphere skies with the love of her life. She'd be part of a partnership that enhanced both their individual strengths and their collective potential. Some discoveries, Luna reflected, were worth waiting a lifetime to make. And some stars were meant to orbit together, creating something stable and beautiful that could illuminate the darkness for years to come. As she prepared for bed, Luna's engagement ring caught the moonlight streaming through her window, casting tiny points of light across the ceiling like a miniature constellation. She smiled, thinking that she'd never seen anything more beautiful than the promise of a future written in starlight, shared with the person who understood that the universe was vast enough to hold both love and ambition, both individual dreams and collaborative adventures. Tomorrow, she and Marcus would begin planning their wedding and their move to Chile. Tonight, she would fall asleep thinking about gravitational pull and orbital mechanics, about the precise conditions required for two separate objects to create something stable and luminous together. The stars outside her window continued their ancient dance, and Luna drifted off to sleep, knowing that she'd found her perfect orbital partner, someone with whom she could explore the infinite beauty of the cosmos while never losing sight of the beautiful complexity of love itself. The end.
Guardian of My Heart, An Angel's Love Story by Serafina Grace. Chapter 1, The Assignment. The celestial realm hummed with an energy that mortals could never comprehend, a symphony of light and purpose that had existed since the dawn of creation. Azrael stood before the Council of Guardians, his luminous wings folded respectfully behind him as he awaited his next assignment. For 3 centuries he had served faithfully, protecting souls through their earthly journeys, guiding them through darkness, and celebrating their triumphs from the shadows. Asriel, spoke Metatron, the voice of the divine, whose presence commanded reverence from all who dwelt in the heavenly realm. Your dedication has not gone unnoticed. Your charges have flourished under your protection, finding their way to the light even in their darkest hours. The angel inclined his head, his silver hair catching the eternal radiance that surrounded them. I serve as I was created to serve, honored one. Indeed. Which is why we have chosen you for this particular assignment. Metatron's expression grew serious, and Asriel felt a shift in the cosmic winds around them. The soul you are to guard carries a burden unlike any you have encountered before. Her name is Elena Cassandra Wells, 26 years of age, residing in the city of Portland. She is a teacher, beloved by her students, cherished by her friends, yet she carries within her heart a darkness that threatens to consume her. Images began to form in the space between them, showing Asriel glimpses of the woman he would be assigned to protect. He saw her in a classroom, her warm brown eyes lighting up as she explained a concept to eager young minds. He witnessed her laughter with friends over coffee, the way she helped elderly neighbors with their groceries, her gentle care for a stray cat that had made her apartment building its home. But beneath it all, Asriel could sense something else, a profound sadness that clung to her spirit like morning mist. What darkness troubles her? Asriel asked, though he suspected he already knew. He had seen it before in other charges, the weight of loss that could either forge a soul stronger or shatter it entirely. 3 years ago, she lost her younger brother in an accident. She was driving that night. Metatron's voice carried infinite compassion. The guilt has taken root in her heart, growing stronger each day despite the truth that the accident was not her fault. She blames herself completely, and that self-condemnation is slowly poisoning every good thing in her life. Asriel's heart clenched with understanding. Guilt was one of the most insidious enemies of the human soul, capable of distorting truth and destroying hope. How far has the darkness progressed? She speaks of joining her brother more frequently. Her friends are concerned, though they don't fully understand the depth of her despair. Without intervention, we calculate that she will make a permanent decision within the next 30 days. The weight of the assignment settled over Asriel like a mantle. 30 days to reach a soul so lost in grief that she could no longer see the light. 30 days to somehow break through walls of guilt and self-hatred that had been building for 3 years. It was perhaps the most challenging assignment he had ever received. There is more, Metatron continued, and Asriel sensed hesitation in the eternal being's voice, which was unusual enough to capture his complete attention. The nature of this assignment may require you to reveal yourself to her. The darkness runs so deep that standard guardian methods may prove insufficient. Asriel's eyes widened. Angels revealing themselves to their charges was rare, reserved only for the most extreme circumstances. The risk was enormous, not just to the mission, but to the angel himself. Close contact with human emotions and experiences could affect even celestial beings in unexpected ways. I understand the risks, Asriel said firmly. If revelation is what's required to save her soul, then I will not hesitate. Metatron studied him for a long moment, and Asriel felt as though every thought and intention in his being was being examined. Finally, the archangel nodded. Very well. But remember, Asriel, that once you choose to reveal yourself, there is no returning to the shadows. Whatever path this assignment takes, you must see it through to the end, regardless of the personal cost. I understand, Asriel replied, though he wondered if he truly grasped what that might mean. When do I begin? Now. She is at the school where she teaches, staying late to prepare lessons. It is there that our watch truly begins. In an instant, Asriel felt the familiar sensation of transitioning between realms. The crystalline spires and endless light of heaven faded, replaced by the weight and texture of the mortal world. He found himself standing in the hallway of Lincoln Elementary School, his form invisible to human eyes, his divine senses immediately attuning to the building around him. The school was nearly empty, most students and teachers having departed hours ago. But from one classroom, warm light still spilled into the hallway, and Azriel could hear the soft scratch of chalk on blackboard. He approached silently, his footsteps making no sound on the worn linoleum floor. Through the doorway, he saw her for the first time with his own eyes rather than through celestial visions. Elena Wells stood at the whiteboard, writing vocabulary words in her neat, careful script. She was smaller than he had expected, with shoulder-length chestnut hair that caught the fluorescent lights, and a face that would have been quite beautiful if not for the profound sadness that shadowed her features. She wore a simple blue sweater and dark slacks, professional but warm, the kind of teacher students would feel comfortable approaching with their problems. As she worked, she hummed softly to herself, a melody that Azriel recognized as one her brother had loved. Even in this small act, the grief was present, woven into every note. Azriel stepped into the classroom, still invisible, and immediately felt the weight of Elena's sorrow like a physical force. It was overwhelming in its intensity, a crushing combination of guilt, loneliness, and despair that had been festering for years. How had she managed to continue functioning under such a burden? How had she maintained her kindness to others when she showed herself none? As he watched, Elena paused in her writing and pressed her forehead against the cool surface of the whiteboard. Her shoulders began to shake and soft sobs escaped her lips. "I can't do this anymore, Marcus," she whispered to the empty room, addressing the brother who could no longer hear her. "I'm so tired of pretending everything is okay. I'm tired of smiling when all I want to do is scream. I miss you so much and it's all my fault." Azriel's heart broke for her. Without thinking, he reached out with his divine essence, sending a gentle wave of comfort in her direction. Elena straightened suddenly, wiping her eyes and looking around the classroom as though she had felt something shift in the air. "Hello," she called softly. "Is someone there?" For a moment, Azriel considered revealing himself immediately. The urge to take away her pain was almost overwhelming. But he forced himself to remain patient. Revealing himself too soon could frighten her or cause her to question her sanity. He needed to proceed carefully, to find the right moment and the right approach. Elena waited a few more seconds, then shook her head and returned to her work. But Azriel noticed that her shoulders seemed a little less tense, her breathing a little easier. The small comfort he had sent had reached her, even if she didn't understand its source. As the evening wore on, Azriel remained in the classroom, studying the woman he had been sent to save. He watched as she carefully arranged materials for the next day's lessons, as she watered the small plants on the windowsill with tender care, as she picked up scraps of paper from the floor even though the janitor would clean the room later. In every action, he saw a soul that naturally gave to others, that found joy in nurturing and teaching, but that had forgotten how to extend that same compassion to herself. When Elena finally gathered her things and prepared to leave, Azriel felt a surge of protectiveness. The school was safe, filled with positive energy and purpose, but outside lay a world that could be harsh and unforgiving. As her guardian, he would follow wherever she went, watching over her every moment until his mission was complete. Elena locked her classroom door and walked through the empty hallways, her footsteps echoing in the silence. She paused at the school's front entrance, looking out at the parking lot where her small sedan waited under a flickering streetlight. For just a moment, Azriel saw her shoulders slump, as though the simple act of leaving this place she loved was almost too much to bear. But then she straightened, took a deep breath, and pushed through the doors into the cool evening air. Azriel followed, invisible but ever-present, as she made her way to her car. As she drove through the city streets toward her apartment, he flew silently above, his divine senses alert for any danger that might threaten her. The apartment building was modest but well-maintained, in a neighborhood where young professionals and students shared space with longtime residents. Elena climbed 2 flights of stairs to her unit, her movements betraying the exhaustion that went far deeper than physical tiredness. Her apartment was small but warm, decorated with the care of someone who had once taken joy in creating a beautiful space. Bookshelves lined the walls, filled with children's literature, teaching resources, and well-worn novels. Photographs smiled from every surface, pictures of Elena with friends, with fellow teachers, and prominently displayed throughout, images of her with a young man who bore a strong resemblance to her. Marcus, Azriel realized. Even 3 years after his death, his presence filled the space. Elena moved through her evening routine mechanically, changing clothes, heating a simple dinner, grading papers at her small kitchen table. But Azriel could sense her growing restlessness, the way the silence of the apartment seemed to press in on her. When she finished eating, instead of settling in for the evening, she began pacing. "I should call Sarah," she murmured to herself, referring to her closest friend. "Or Mom. They're always asking me to check in more often." But she didn't reach for her phone. Instead, she moved to the living room window and stared out at the city lights. Azriel positioned himself nearby, studying her profile in the soft glow from the street below. "Some guardian angel you turned out to be," Elena said suddenly, and Azriel started, wondering if somehow she could sense his presence. But she was speaking to the photograph of Marcus that sat on the windowsill. "You were supposed to watch over me, remember? That's what you always said when we were kids. Don't worry, Elena, I'll always be your guardian angel." Her voice broke on the last words, and she pressed her palm against the glass. "But where were you that night? Where were you when I needed you most? And where are you now, when I can barely find a reason to keep going?" Azriel's essence ached with the need to respond, to tell her that she was not alone, that she was loved beyond measure, that her brother's death was not her fault. The words burned in his celestial heart, demanding to be spoken. Instead, he sent another gentle wave of comfort, this one stronger than before. Elena straightened, her hand moving from the window to her heart, as though she could feel the warmth settling there. "That's strange," she whispered, looking around the room. "I almost felt—" She trailed off, shaking her head at her own foolishness. But Azriel saw the way her posture had changed, how the crushing weight of despair had lifted just slightly. It was a small victory, but an important one. As the night deepened, Elena finally settled on her couch with a book, though Azriel could tell she was reading the same page over and over without comprehension. Her thoughts were elsewhere, lost in memories and regrets that played out behind her eyes like a tortuous film. When she finally went to bed, Azriel took up his vigil in the corner of her bedroom, his form still invisible but his presence steady and protective. He watched over her restless sleep, sending peaceful dreams when the nightmares threatened to take hold, easing the tension from her shoulders when grief tried to strangle her even in slumber. This was how it had always been for him, the silent guardian, the invisible protector, the watcher in the shadows. But as he sat in Elena's room, feeling the depth of her pain and the urgency of his mission, Azriel began to understand that this assignment would be different from all the others. The usual methods might not be enough. The darkness that held Elena was too strong, too deeply rooted in self-condemnation and survivor's guilt. As dawn approached and the first pale light began to filter through her bedroom curtains, Azriel made a decision that would change everything. When the right moment came, when she was ready to hear it, he would reveal himself. He would risk everything, his position, his divine nature, perhaps even his immortal soul, to save hers. The thought should have terrified him. Instead, as he watched Elena's face relax in sleep, finally free from the torment that plagued her waking hours, Azriel felt only a fierce determination. She was his charge, his responsibility, his sacred trust. And he would not let the darkness claim her. The first day of his most challenging assignment had begun. Chapter 2: Small Miracles. Elena woke to sunlight streaming through her bedroom window, and the unusual sensation of having slept peacefully through the night. For the first time in months, she hadn't been jolted awake by the recurring nightmare of screeching tires and shattered glass. Instead, she remembered dreams of gentle music and warm embraces, though the details faded even as she tried to grasp them. She lay still for a moment, analyzing this unexpected gift of rest. Perhaps she was finally healing, she thought hopefully, then immediately felt guilty for the possibility. What right did she have to heal when Marcus never would? Azriel watched from his invisible perch near the window as the brief moment of peace on Elena's face transformed back into the familiar mask of grief and self-recrimination. He had given her those peaceful dreams, but he could not give her permission to forgive herself. That was a choice she would have to make, though he was determined to help her find the strength to make it. As Elena went through her morning routine, Azriel studied her more closely in the daylight. The shadows under her eyes spoke of too many sleepless nights, and her clothes hung a little too loosely on her frame, suggesting she hadn't been taking proper care of herself. Yet there was still something luminous about her, a natural grace and kindness that shone through despite her pain. She paused at Marcus's photograph as she always did, touching the frame gently before whispered words that had become a morning ritual. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." The words hit Azriel like physical blows. How many times had she spoken those words? How many mornings had she begun with this self-inflicted wound? He found himself wishing desperately that he could simply appear and tell her the truth, that the accident had been caused by a drunk driver who ran a red light, that no amount of skill or attention could have prevented it, that Marcus himself would be heartbroken to know how she was punishing herself. But revelation required perfect timing. Too soon, and she might dismiss him as a hallucination wrought on by stress and grief. Too late, and the darkness might claim her before he could reach her. He needed to prepare the way, to open her heart to the possibility of divine intervention through smaller signs and wonders. At Lincoln Elementary, Elena threw herself into her work with the intensity of someone seeking escape from her own thoughts. Her third-grade class was preparing for their annual spring concert, and she spent the morning helping them practice their songs and choreography. Azriel positioned himself at the back of the classroom, marveling at the transformation that came over Elena when she was with her students. Here she was fully alive, patient with the children who struggled to remember their lines, encouraging to those who were nervous about performing, gentle but firm in maintaining order. Her students clearly adored her, competing for her attention and approval in the way children do with teachers they trust completely. "Mrs. Wells," called out Emma, a bright-eyed girl with pigtails, "I forgot my costume for practice. My mom was supposed to pack it, but she was rushing this morning." Azriel saw Elena's face soften with understanding. "That's okay, sweetheart. Let's see what we can do." She rummaged through the classroom supply closet and emerged with a cheerful yellow scarf and a small bag of costume jewelry from previous school productions. With a few creative adjustments, she transformed Emma's regular clothes into a perfectly acceptable substitute for the missing costume. "There," Elena said, stepping back to admire her work. "You look beautiful. Sometimes the best costumes are the ones we create from what we have." Emma beamed and twirled, delighted with her new look. But Azriel noticed that several other children were now claiming to have forgotten their costumes too, clearly hoping for the same personal attention from their beloved teacher. Elena laughed, the first genuine laughter Azriel had heard from her, and began creating impromptu costumes for the other children as well. Soon the entire class was involved, helping each other and giggling as they transformed everyday objects into magical performance gear. Watching this scene, Azriel felt a surge of protective love for his charge. This was who Elena truly was beneath the grief: creative, nurturing, someone who could see possibility where others saw problems. The children sensed this about her, which was why they gravitated toward her so naturally. As the morning progressed, Azriel began to work small miracles on Elena's behalf. When she reached for a marker that had rolled under a desk, he gently guided it back to her hand. When the classroom's temperamental computer threatened to crash during an important lesson, he stabilized its circuits with a touch of divine energy. When young Michael started to have an asthma attack during recess, Azriel alerted Elena with a subtle sense of urgency that sent her to the playground just in time to help the boy with his inhaler. These interventions were so subtle that Elena attributed them to luck or intuition, but Azriel noticed that each small success lifted her spirits incrementally. By lunchtime, she seemed lighter somehow, more present in her interactions with colleagues. "You seem different today," observed Janet Morrison, the kindergarten teacher who had become one of Elena's closest friends at the school. They were sitting together in the faculty lounge, sharing sandwiches and grading papers. "More like your old self." Elena paused in her grading, considering. "I had a good night's sleep for once. Maybe that's it." "Well, whatever it is, I'm glad to see it. The kids can tell when you're really with them, you know. They've been talking about how fun this morning was. A shadow passed over Alina's face. I don't want to let them down. They depend on their teachers to be stable and present. Elena, Janet said gently, setting down her red pen and turning to face her friend fully. You're one of the best teachers I've ever worked with. But you're also human. You've been through something terrible, and it's okay to still be healing from it. It's been 3 years, Elena replied quietly. I should be past this by now. Says who? There's no timeline for grief, especially when it involves guilt. Have you thought about talking to someone again? Dr. Reynolds really helped you before. Elena shook her head firmly. Talking doesn't change what happened. It doesn't bring Marcus back or make what I did any less awful. Asriel wanted to interrupt, to tell Janet exactly what words might break through Elena's defenses. But he forced himself to remain patient, knowing that his time would come. The afternoon brought new challenges as storm clouds gathered outside the classroom windows. Several children became restless and anxious as thunder rumbled in the distance, and Elena found herself managing both lesson plans and emotional meltdowns as the weather worsened. When the lights flickered during a particularly loud thunderclap, 8-year-old Sarah began to cry, reminded of a traumatic experience during a storm the previous year. Elena immediately went to comfort the girl, pulling up a chair beside her desk and speaking in soothing tones. It's just noise, Elena said gently, taking Sarah's small hand in hers. I know it sounds scary, but the storm can't hurt us in here. We're safe. But as she spoke these words of comfort to her student, Asriel could sense Elena's own emotional walls beginning to crack. The storm outside was triggering memories of the night Marcus died. Another stormy evening when visibility was poor and roads were slick with rain. Mrs. Wells, Sarah said, looking up at her teacher with trusting eyes, my mom says that when there's thunder, it's just the angels bowling in heaven. Do you think that's true? Elena's breath caught, and Asriel felt her heart rate spike. Angels. The word hung in the air between them, laden with significance that the child couldn't possibly understand. Elena started, then stopped, struggling to find words that wouldn't reveal her own spiritual crisis. I think your mom has a beautiful way of explaining scary things. Do you believe in angels, Mrs. Wells? The question was innocent, asked with the straightforward curiosity that only children possess. But for Elena, it cut straight to the heart of her deepest pain and confusion. I used to, she whispered, and Asriel heard in those 3 words the entire story of her shattered faith. This was his moment. Asriel could feel it in every fiber of his celestial being. The perfect opportunity to begin revealing himself, to plant the first seed of divine possibility in Elena's wounded heart. He moved silently to the classroom supply closet and, using his divine abilities, caused a small item to fall from one of the shelves. The soft thud was barely audible above the storm, but it was enough to catch Elena's attention. What was that? Sarah asked, her fear of the thunder momentarily forgotten. Elena rose and walked to the closet, pulling open the door to investigate. There on the floor lay a small white feather, pristine and perfect, though there were no birds or down-filled items in the supply closet that could account for its presence. Elena picked up the feather, turning it over in her hands with wonder. It was unlike any feather she had ever seen, seeming to catch and hold light in an almost luminous way. Maybe it fell from an angel's wing, Sarah suggested innocently, having followed her teacher to investigate the sound. Elena's hands trembled as she held the feather. For just a moment, Asriel saw hope flicker in her eyes, a desperate, fragile hope that maybe, just maybe, she wasn't as alone as she believed. But then her rational mind reasserted itself, and she shook her head. It probably just got caught on someone's clothing and fell when they hung up their coat. Yet she didn't throw the feather away. Instead, she carefully placed it on her desk, where it seemed to glow softly in the afternoon light. The storm passed as suddenly as it had arrived, leaving the air clean and fresh. The children's energy returned, and the remainder of the afternoon proceeded normally. But Azriel noticed that Elena's eyes kept drifting to the feather on her desk, and each time she looked at it, he sensed a tiny crack forming in the walls around her heart. After school, as Elena cleaned her classroom and prepared for the next day, she picked up the feather again. This time, she held it for a long moment, and Azriel felt her whisper a prayer, the first she had spoken in 3 years. "If you're real," she said so softly that only divine ears could hear, "if there really is someone watching over us, please help me understand why this happened. Help me find some kind of peace." The prayer was tentative, filled with doubt and pain, but it was a prayer nonetheless. Azriel felt it resonate through every level of existence, from the earthly realm where they stood to the highest reaches of heaven itself. As Elena drove home that evening, she carried the feather with her, placed carefully in her purse like a talisman. She found herself taking a different route than usual, one that led past the cemetery where Marcus was buried. She hadn't visited his grave in months, unable to bear the weight of standing before the headstone that bore his name. But tonight, perhaps influenced by the day's strange occurrences and the memory of Sarah's innocent question about angels, Elena found herself pulling into the cemetery parking lot. Azriel followed as she made her way through the neat rows of graves to the spot where her brother rested. The headstone was simple but beautiful, engraved with Marcus's name, dates, and the words "beloved son and brother." Fresh flowers, daisies, Marcus's favorite, sat in the vase beside the stone, placed there by their mother, who visited every week without fail. Elena knelt beside the grave, pulling the white feather from her purse and placing it gently against the headstone. "I found this today," she whispered to the silent stone. "A little girl asked me if I believed in angels, and I didn't know what to tell her. I used to believe that you were my guardian angel, remember? You always said you would watch over me." Tears began to flow down her cheeks, but for the first time in years, they weren't tears of pure anguish. Mixed with the grief was something else, a tentative reaching toward hope. "I miss you so much, Marcus. I would give anything to have you back, to undo that night, to be the one in the ground instead of you. But maybe there's something I'm not seeing. Something I'm not understanding." She sat in silence for several minutes, and Azriel remained nearby, sending waves of peace and comfort that seemed to settle around her like an invisible embrace. When she finally rose to leave, her movements were less burdened than they had been in months. That night, Elena fell asleep holding the white feather, and her dreams were filled with images of light and protection, of presences just beyond her vision offering comfort and love. She didn't wake once until morning, and when she did, she felt as though something fundamental had shifted in her world. Azriel watched over her peaceful sleep and knew that the real work was just beginning. The feather had been a small miracle, a gentle introduction to the possibility of divine intervention. But Elena would need much more than subtle signs to truly heal. She would need to experience the reality of divine love in a way that couldn't be explained away or dismissed. As dawn broke over the city, painting Elena's bedroom in soft gold light, Azriel made his final preparations for the revelation that would change both their destinies forever. Tomorrow, he would step out of the shadows and into her world, risking everything for the chance to save her soul. The guardian angel who had spent centuries protecting from a distance was about to discover what it meant to love a human heart up close. Chapter 3: Revelation. Elena arrived at school the next morning, carrying the white feather in her jacket pocket, touching it periodically like a worry stone. She had awakened with an unusual sense of anticipation, as though something important was about to happen, though she couldn't imagine what that might be. The feeling persisted throughout the morning as she taught her lessons and helped her students with their work. Several times, she caught herself glancing toward the back of the classroom, as though expecting to see someone there, though she couldn't explain why. Azriel sensed her growing awareness of his presence and knew the time for revelation was approaching. For 3 days he had been laying groundwork, small miracles, gentle interventions, subtle signs that had begun to soften Elena's heart toward the possibility of divine help. Today, everything would change. The moment came during lunch recess, when Elena was supervising the playground alone due to a colleague's sudden illness. The afternoon was warm and bright, with children scattered across the equipment in small groups, their laughter filling the air with joy. Elena stood near the swing set, watching with the vigilant attention all good teachers maintain during recess, when a commotion near the school's back fence caught her attention. A group of older boys from the neighboring middle school had gathered on the other side of the fence, and they were taunting one of Elena's students, Tommy Rodriguez, a quiet boy who often struggled with confidence. The boys were calling him names and throwing small rocks in his direction, clearly trying to provoke a reaction. Elena immediately started toward the fence, her protective instincts flaring. But as she moved, one of the middle schoolers picked up a larger rock, taking aim at Tommy with obvious malicious intent. Time seemed to slow as Elena realized she was too far away to intervene, too distant to protect her student from what was about to happen. That's when Azrael stepped out of invisibility and into the mortal realm. He materialized directly between Tommy and the thrown rock, his form solid and visible, his wings spread wide in a gesture of protection. The rock struck his wing harmlessly and fell to the ground, but it was the sight of him that stopped everyone in their tracks. Azrael stood nearly 6 feet tall, with silver hair that seemed to catch and hold light, and eyes the color of storm clouds shot through with starlight. His wings were magnificent, broad and powerful, with feathers that shimmered like pearls. He wore simple clothes that somehow managed to look both timeless and contemporary, and his entire being radiated a calm authority that commanded immediate respect. The bullying boys on the other side of the fence stumbled backward, their faces pale with shock and fear. Without a word, they turned and ran, abandoning their harassment of Tommy in favor of escaping what they couldn't possibly understand. Tommy himself stood frozen, staring up at Azrael with wide eyes. But rather than fear, the boy's expression showed wonder and recognition, as though some deep part of his soul knew exactly what he was seeing. "Are you?" Tommy whispered, his voice barely audible. "I am," Azrael replied gently, his voice carrying harmonics that seemed to resonate in the very air around them. "And you are safe, Tommy. You have always been safe." He knelt down to the boy's level, folding his wings so as not to overwhelm the child. "Those boys won't bother you again. But remember, your worth doesn't come from what others say about you. You are precious beyond measure, exactly as you are." Tommy nodded solemnly, accepting this divine wisdom with the matter-of-fact faith that children possess. "Are you my guardian angel?" "I am a guardian angel," Azrael confirmed. "And there are others like me, watching over everyone you love. You are never truly alone, Tommy. Remember that." The boy smiled, a radiant expression that transformed his usually solemn face, and ran back toward the playground equipment to rejoin his friends. To him, encountering an angel was simply another part of his day, no more surprising than finding a butterfly or hearing a bird sing. But Elena had witnessed the entire exchange from 30 feet away, and for her, the world had fundamentally shifted on its axis. She stood paralyzed, her mind struggling to process what she had seen. The logical part of her brain offered desperate explanations: stress-induced hallucination, a breakdown brought on by years of suppressed grief, anything other than the impossible truth standing before her. But her heart knew better. Every detail was too perfect, too real to be a product of her damaged psyche. The way light seemed to bend around him, the absolute peace that radiated from his presence, the undeniable reality of his wings, this was no hallucination. Azrael rose slowly and turned to face her, his expression gentle and understanding. He made no move to approach, giving her time to absorb what she was seeing, to choose how she wanted to respond. "Elena," he said, and his voice speaking her name sent warmth cascading through her entire being. "I know this is difficult to understand. You're—" She struggled to form words, her voice coming out as barely more than a whisper. "You're an angel." "I am? My name is Azrael, and I have been watching over you for several days now." Elena looked around the playground frantically, expecting to see other people reacting to this impossible sight. But the children continued playing as though nothing unusual was happening, and she realized with growing amazement that somehow only she and Tommy could see him. This isn't possible, she said, taking a step backward. Angels don't just appear in school playgrounds. They don't reveal themselves to random teachers having mental breakdowns. Asriel's expression softened with infinite compassion. You're not having a breakdown, Elena. And you're not random. You are precious beyond measure, a soul worth saving, worth fighting for. Saving from what? The question came out sharper than she intended, defensive and afraid. From the darkness that has been consuming you for 3 years. From the guilt that was never yours to carry. From the lies you've been telling yourself about that night and about your worth. Elena's face went white. How do you know about that night? Because I know you, Elena Wells. I know about Marcus, about the accident, about the weight you've been carrying. I know about the nightmares, the guilt, the way you've been slowly withdrawing from everyone who loves you. And I know that you've been contemplating joining your brother, believing that the world would be better without you in it. Tears began flowing down her cheeks, tears of shock, fear, and something that might have been relief. It's true, isn't it? All of it. You really are what you appear to be. I am an angel of the Most High, assigned to be your guardian. I have been watching over you, protecting you, sending you small comforts when the darkness became too heavy to bear. The dreams, Elena whispered, understanding flooding through her. The peaceful sleep, the feather, the way everything seemed to go right yesterday. All true. But Elena, I need you to understand something vital. The accident was not your fault. She shook her head, violently. No, you don't understand. I was driving. I was responsible for keeping him safe, and I failed. If I had been more careful, more alert. If you had been any more careful or alert, you both would have died, Asriel interrupted firmly. The drunk driver who ran the red light was traveling at nearly 80 miles per hour. He struck the passenger side of your car with such force that nothing could have prevented Marcus's death. If you had been even a second earlier into that intersection, you would have taken the full impact, and both of you would have been killed instantly. Elena staggered as though physically struck. That's not, the police said. The police told you the facts about the accident, but they couldn't tell you about the spiritual realities at work that night. They couldn't tell you that Marcus's time on Earth was complete, that his soul was ready to return home. They couldn't tell you that your survival was not an accident, but a divine decision. Why? The word came out as a broken sob. Why was I allowed to live when he had to die? He was better than me, kinder, more deserving of life. Asriel stepped closer, his presence radiating such peace that Elena felt her panic beginning to subside, despite the impossibility of the situation. Because you both have different purposes, different destinies. Marcus's work on Earth was finished. He had touched every life he was meant to touch, learned every lesson he came here to learn. His soul was ready for the next stage of existence. But your work is not finished, Elena. You have students yet to teach, lives yet to touch, love yet to give and receive. But I'm broken, Elena whispered. I can't even take care of myself, let alone help anyone else. You are wounded, not broken. And even in your wounding, look at what you've accomplished. Asriel gestured toward the playground, where her students played under her watchful care. Look at Tommy, whom you protect every day with your kindness. Look at Emma, who feels beautiful because of your creativity. Look at all the children who trust you completely because they sense the love in your heart. Elena followed his gaze, seeing her students with new eyes. Even in her darkest period, she had continued showing up for them, continued providing the stability and care they needed. Somehow, even while drowning in her own grief, she had managed to be a source of light for others. I don't understand, she said. If angels are real, if God is watching over us, why did Marcus have to die at all? Why didn't someone save him? Asriel was quiet for a long moment, and Elena could see him choosing his words carefully. Death is not the ending you think it is, Elena. It is a transition, a doorway from one form of existence to another. Marcus was not abandoned that night. He was welcomed home by legions of angels, embraced by the divine love that created him. But I can't talk to him anymore. I can't hear his voice or see his smile. I can't tell him I love him or that I'm sorry. Can't you? Asriel asked gently. Haven't you been talking to him every day for 3 years? Do you think that love simply disappears when the body dies? Elena considered this, remembering all the one-sided conversations she'd had with Marcus's photograph, all the times she'd spoken to him as though he could hear her. The love between souls is eternal, Asriel continued. It transcends physical death, transcends time and space. Marcus hears every word you speak to him, feels every tear you cry for him. And Elena, he is not angry with you. He is heartbroken that you blame yourself for something that was never in your control. How can you possibly know that? Asriel smiled, and for the first time since his appearance, Elena saw something beyond divine authority in his expression. She saw genuine warmth, almost affection. Because I have spoken with him. Part of my assignment involved understanding exactly what happened that night, which meant consulting with Marcus himself. He begged me to tell you that your survival was not a mistake, that he has been trying to comfort you from the spirit realm, that your guilt is causing him pain because he loves you and wants you to be happy. Elena's knees buckled, and she sank onto a nearby bench, overwhelmed by the magnitude of what Asriel was telling her. For 3 years, she had carried the belief that Marcus would hate her for surviving when he couldn't. To learn that the opposite was true, that he had been trying to reach her with comfort and forgiveness, was almost more than she could process. I felt him sometimes, she admitted quietly. In dreams or when I was talking to his picture. Sometimes I could almost hear his voice telling me it was going to be okay. But I thought I was just imagining it, creating what I wanted to hear. Those moments were real, Elena. Love finds a way to cross any boundary, even the one between life and death. Marcus has been your guardian angel in his own way, though he asked for help when he realized how deeply the guilt was rooted in your heart. The recess bell rang, signaling that it was time for students to return to their classrooms. Elena looked around frantically, realizing that she was about to have a classroom full of children while still reeling from the most significant moment of her life. I don't know how to process this, she said, standing on unsteady legs. I don't know how to go back to teaching multiplication tables and spelling words when everything I thought I knew about reality has just been turned upside down. You don't have to process it all at once, Asriel said gently. Take it one moment at a time. Be with your students, let their joy and innocence anchor you. The questions and understanding will come gradually. Will I see you again? Elena asked, and she was surprised by how much the possibility of his departure frightened her. If you want to. My revelation to you changes the nature of my assignment. I can no longer be your invisible guardian. You now have the choice of whether to accept my help and guidance openly. Elena looked at him, really looked at him, taking in the impossible reality of his presence, the divine authority tempered with genuine caring in his expression, the way being near him made her feel safer than she had in years. I want to see you again, she said firmly. I have so many questions, so much I need to understand. Then I will come to you when school ends. We can talk without the constraints of time and the presence of others. As her students began filing back into the building, Elena felt a moment of panic. Wait, what if I've imagined all of this? What if I'm having some kind of breakdown and none of this is real? Asriel reached into the air and plucked another white feather, this one even more luminous than the one she had found in her classroom. He handed it to her, and when their fingers touched, Elena felt a shock of divine energy that left no doubt about his reality. Keep this, he said. When doubt tries to convince you that this encounter was a fantasy, hold the feather and remember what you felt when you touched my hand. Elena clutched the feather tightly, feeling its warm pulse against her palm. Thank you, she whispered. Thank you for coming to me, for telling me about Marcus, for helping me understand. Thank you for being brave enough to listen, Asriel replied. It takes tremendous courage to let your understanding of the world be transformed. As Elena walked back into the school building with her students, she felt as though she was moving through a dream. Everything looked the same: the familiar hallways, the cheerful bulletin boards, the sound of children's voices, but everything had changed. The world now contained angels and divine intervention, and the promise that love really was stronger than death. For the first time in 3 years, Elena Wells had hope. Chapter 4: Divine Love. The remainder of the school day passed in a blur for Elena. She somehow managed to teach her afternoon lessons and supervise her students, but her mind remained focused on the extraordinary encounter during recess. Several times, she found herself touching the feather in her pocket, drawing comfort from its warm pulse and using it to anchor herself in the reality of what had happened. Her students seemed to sense something different about her, though they couldn't identify what it was. She smiled more readily, spoke more gently, and there was a lightness in her movements that hadn't been there in years. When young Emma asked if she was feeling better, Elena paused in surprise, realizing that she did feel better. Not healed, not whole, but definitely better than she had in a very long time. "I think I am feeling better, sweetheart," Elena told the girl. "Thank you for noticing." As the final bell rang and students gathered their belongings, Elena felt a flutter of nervous anticipation. Asriel had promised to come to her when school ended, and despite everything she had experienced, part of her still wondered if she would see him again. What if the revelation had been a one-time event? What if he had returned to whatever realm angels inhabited, leaving her with only memory and a feather as proof that any of it had been real? After ensuring that all her students had been safely picked up or boarded their buses, Elena returned to her classroom to gather her things. She moved slowly, partly from reluctance to leave and partly from a growing sense that something significant was about to happen. She was organizing papers at her desk when she felt a familiar shift in the air, the same sense of presence she had noticed during the past few days but hadn't understood. She looked up to find Asriel standing near the windows, solid and real, his divine radiance somehow contained enough to avoid overwhelming her. "You came back," she said, relief evident in her voice. "I told you I would," Asriel replied gently. "Did you doubt it?" Elena considered the question honestly. "Part of me did. It's hard to accept that something so extraordinary could happen to someone like me." "Elena," Asriel said, moving closer to her desk, "you need to stop thinking of yourself as ordinary. From our perspective, every human soul is extraordinary. You are a unique expression of divine love, created with specific gifts and purposes that no one else can fulfill." She shook her head, old patterns of self-deprecation asserting themselves. "I'm just a teacher. I live in a small apartment, drive an old car, spend my evenings grading papers and watching television. There's nothing special about me." "The fact that you can say that while surrounded by evidence of the lives you've touched shows how deeply the darkness has distorted your self-perception," Asriel said, his voice holding a note of sadness. "Let me show you what I see when I look at you." He gestured toward the classroom walls, which were covered with student artwork, thank you notes from parents, and photographs from various school events. "I see a woman who has created a safe haven for children, a place where they know they are valued and loved. I see someone who stays late to help struggling students, who spends her own money on classroom supplies, who remembers every child's birthday and celebrates their smallest victories." Elena followed his gaze, seeing her classroom through his eyes. She had never really noticed how much love was reflected in every corner. In the reading nook she had created with soft cushions and fairy lights, in the encouragement board where she posted her students' achievements, in the carefully tended plants and the photographs that captured moments of joy and learning. "I see a woman who has continued to pour out love and care even while her own heart was breaking," Asriel continued. "Do you have any idea how rare that is? How many people, faced with the kind of loss and guilt you've carried, would have simply given up? Yet you have shown up every day for 3 years, giving these children the stability and affection they need." "I had to," Elena said quietly. "They were depending on me." "Exactly. And that choice, made every single day despite your pain, is what makes you extraordinary. That is divine love in action, Elena, love that flows outward even when the source feels empty." Elena sank into her desk chair, overwhelmed by this new perspective on her life. I never thought of it that way. I just did what I had to do. Which is exactly what makes it so beautiful. You didn't help these children for recognition or reward. You did it because love compelled you to do it, because even in your darkest moments, you couldn't stand to see others suffer. Asriel moved to the reading nook and settled onto one of the large cushions, folding his legs in a surprisingly human gesture. His wings adjusted automatically, creating a sense of shelter and peace around him. "Sit with me," he said, patting the cushion beside him. "We have much to discuss, and I want you to be comfortable." Elena hesitated for a moment, then joined him in the reading nook. Sitting close to him, she could feel the warmth that radiated from his being, and she realized that it was the same comforting presence she had sensed during her darkest moments over the past few months. "That was you," she said suddenly. "All those times I felt like someone was with me when I was crying or couldn't sleep. You were there." "I was. It has been my privilege to watch over you, to offer what comfort I could while remaining hidden." "Why hidden? Why not reveal yourself sooner?" Asriel was quiet for a moment, considering how to explain divine protocols to a human mind. Angels revealing themselves to their charges is extremely rare, reserved for only the most critical situations. There are rules that govern our interactions with humans, boundaries that exist for good reasons. What kind of reasons? Contact with the divine realm can be overwhelming for human minds and hearts. It can create dependency rather than growth, fear rather than faith. Most of the time, our work is more effective when we remain unseen, allowing humans to make their own choices and find their own strength. Elena studied his face, noting the care with which he chose his words. "But my situation was different." "Your situation was desperate. The darkness had such a hold on you that normal guardian methods weren't sufficient. You were so convinced of your own guilt and worthlessness that you couldn't hear the subtle promptings of divine love. More drastic intervention was necessary. And revealing yourself was a risk?" Asriel's expression grew serious. "A significant risk. When angels interact directly with humans, especially over extended periods, we become invested in ways that can affect our ability to serve objectively." "Invested how?" "We begin to care about our charges not just as souls to be protected, but as individuals with unique personalities, quirks, hopes, and dreams. We start to feel their pain more acutely, their joy more intensely. It can make us more effective guardians, but it also makes us vulnerable to emotions that angels aren't typically designed to experience." Elena felt a flutter of something she couldn't quite identify. "Are you saying that spending time with me could change you somehow?" "It already has," Asriel admitted, his storm cloud eyes meeting hers directly. "From the moment I first watched you with your students, I began to see you not just as an assignment, but as Elena, a remarkable woman with a beautiful heart and a wounded spirit. That recognition has affected every decision I've made since." The air between them seemed to shimmer with unspoken possibilities. Elena found herself studying the angles of his face, the way his silver hair caught the afternoon light, the gentle strength in his hands. This was an angel, a being from another realm entirely, yet sitting beside him felt more natural than anything had in years. "Is that why you chose to reveal yourself?" she asked softly. "Because you care about me specifically, not just about completing your assignment?" "Yes," Asriel said simply. "Though I pray it was also the right decision from a divine perspective." "What happens now? Do you go back to heaven and get assigned to someone else?" The thought of him leaving created an unexpected ache in Elena's chest. In just one day, Asriel had become an anchor point in her world, a source of comfort and understanding she hadn't known she needed. "That depends on you," Asriel said carefully. "My original assignment was to save you from the darkness that threatened to claim your life. That mission is far from complete. If you're willing to accept my continued presence and guidance, I can remain as your guardian until you're fully healed. And if I'm not willing?" Then I would respect your choice and return to the celestial realm, though other provisions would be made for your continued protection. Elena didn't need to think about her answer. I want you to stay. I know that sounds selfish, but I can't imagine facing all of this alone. You're the first person, the first being, who has made me feel like maybe I'm not beyond saving. Relief flickered across Azriel's features. You were never beyond saving, Elena. But I'm honored that you trust me to help you find your way back to the light. They sat in comfortable silence for several minutes, watching the late afternoon sun paint golden rectangles on the classroom floor. Elena found herself marveling at the surreal nature of the situation, sitting in her elementary school classroom, having a conversation with an angel as though it were the most natural thing in the world. Can I ask you something personal? Elena said, eventually. Of course. What's it like being an angel? What was your existence like before you were assigned to me? Azriel smiled, and Elena realized it was the first truly unguarded expression she had seen from him. It's difficult to explain in human terms. Imagine existing in a state of perfect peace and purpose, surrounded by divine love so complete that you never question your worth or your place in creation. Every moment is filled with meaning, every action aligned with cosmic harmony. It sounds wonderful, Elena said wistfully. It is. But it's also… He paused, searching for the right words. Predictable, perhaps. Uniform? In heaven, there is no struggle, no growth through adversity, no discovery of strength you didn't know you possessed. Everything simply is as it should be. And watching over humans has changed that for you. Watching over you has changed that for me, Azriel corrected gently. I've witnessed your struggle with grief and guilt, yes, but I've also seen your incredible capacity for love, your resilience, your ability to find beauty and meaning even in the midst of pain. These are uniquely human gifts, Elena. Angels don't experience anything quite like them. Elena felt warmth spreading through her chest, not just the divine comfort she had grown used to, but something more personal and specific. Are you saying that being around humans has taught you things you couldn't learn in heaven? Being around you has taught me things I couldn't learn in heaven, Azriel said, his voice soft with an emotion Elena couldn't quite identify. I've learned that love doesn't always make life easier. Sometimes it makes it more complicated, more painful, but also infinitely more meaningful. I've learned that choosing hope in the face of despair is perhaps the most divine act any being can perform. The way he was looking at her made Elena's heart race in a way that had nothing to do with the supernatural nature of their situation. There was something in his expression that transcended the relationship between guardian and charge, something that spoke to a deeper connection forming between them. Azriel, she said hesitantly, what you're describing, it sounds like you're talking about more than just professional concern for my well-being. He was quiet for a long moment, and Elena could see him wrestling with something significant. You're right, he said finally. What I feel for you has evolved beyond guardian duty. I care about you as an individual in ways that are unprecedented for an angel. I want to see you heal, not just because it's my mission, but because your happiness has become important to me personally. Elena's breath caught. Is that allowed? Can angels feel that way about humans? I don't know, Azriel admitted. It's not a situation that's addressed in heavenly protocols. But I do know that my feelings for you don't diminish my desire to help you heal. If anything, they strengthen it. Elena reached out tentatively and touched his hand. The moment their skin made contact, she felt the same shock of divine energy as before, but this time it was tempered by something warmer, more personal. I care about you too, she said quietly. I know that probably seems impossible. We've only really known each other for one day, but you've shown me more understanding and compassion than I've felt in years. You've given me hope when I thought it was gone forever. Azriel turned his hand palm up, intertwining their fingers. His touch was warm and real, utterly human despite his divine nature. Whatever this is between us, he said, wherever it leads, I want you to know that my primary concern will always be your healing and happiness. I won't let my feelings for you interfere with helping you find peace. What if helping me find peace means you have to leave eventually? The question hung in the air between them, heavy with implications neither was ready to fully explore. Then I will leave, Azriel said, though Elena could hear the cost of that promise in his voice. Your well-being matters more than my desires. Elena squeezed his hand, marveling at the strength she could feel beneath his gentle touch. Then we'll have to make sure that my healing doesn't require you to go anywhere. As the sun set outside the classroom windows, bathing them both in warm golden light, Elena felt something shift inside her heart. For the first time in 3 years, she wasn't just existing from one day to the next. She had something to look forward to, someone who understood her pain and believed in her worth. The darkness wasn't gone. She could still feel it lurking in the corners of her mind, waiting to whisper its familiar lies. But now it had competition. Now there was light, hope, and the revolutionary possibility that she might be worthy of divine love after all. As they sat together in the peaceful classroom, angel and human hands intertwined, both Elena and Azriel knew that they had crossed a threshold from which there would be no returning. Whatever lay ahead would test them both in ways they couldn't yet imagine, but for now, it was enough to simply be together, sharing the quiet miracle of unexpected connection. Chapter 5: Healing Hearts. 3 weeks had passed since Azriel's revelation, and Elena's world had transformed in ways both subtle and profound. The angel had taken up residence in her apartment, occupying the small guest room that had remained untouched since Marcus's death. His presence had brought a sense of peace and safety that Elena hadn't experienced in years, but it had also introduced new complexities she was still learning to navigate. Living with an angel, Elena discovered, was both extraordinary and surprisingly domestic. Azriel didn't require sleep or food in the human sense, but he found joy in sharing meals with her and sitting quietly while she slept, his divine presence keeping nightmares at bay. He was endlessly patient with her questions about heaven and divine purpose, but he also showed genuine interest in the mundane details of her human life, her favorite movies, her teaching strategies, the way she organized her spice cabinet. More importantly, he had become her anchor in the healing process that was slowly, carefully beginning to unfold. With his guidance, Elena had started to examine her feelings about the accident with new perspective, to challenge the guilt-driven narratives she had constructed around that terrible night. This evening, they sat together on her couch, Elena curled against Azriel's side while he read aloud from one of her favorite books. It was a picture of domestic tranquility that would have seemed impossible just a month ago, yet it had become their nightly ritual. Elena found herself looking forward to these quiet hours together, when the weight of grief felt lighter, and the future seemed to hold possibility rather than just emptiness. Elena, Azriel said, closing the book and setting it aside, there's something I think you're ready to hear. She looked up at him, noting the careful way he chose his words when he had something significant to share. What is it? I've been in communication with the celestial realm about your progress. There's an opportunity for you to speak with Marcus directly, if you're willing. Elena sat up abruptly, her heart racing. Speak with Marcus? How is that possible? There are sacred spaces where the veil between realms is thin enough to allow communication between souls. With divine permission and angelic guidance, you could have a conversation with your brother, to hear his voice, to tell him what you need to say, to receive the peace that only direct contact can provide. Tears immediately sprang to Elena's eyes. For 3 years, she had longed for just one more conversation with Marcus, one chance to apologize, to tell him she loved him, to hear his voice again. The possibility seemed too miraculous to be real. There would be conditions, Azriel continued gently. The meeting could only last a short time, and you would need to be emotionally prepared for the intensity of the experience. Direct contact with souls who have passed can be overwhelming for humans. I don't care about the conditions, Elena said immediately. Yes, I want to see him. I need to see him. Azriel studied her face carefully. Are you certain? Once this happens, there will be no going back to the way things were. You'll have to accept whatever Marcus tells you, even if it challenges beliefs you've held about that night. I'm ready, Elena said firmly. I need to know the truth, whatever it is. 2 days later, Azriel led Elena to a small chapel in the mountains outside Portland. The building was ancient by American standards, built of weathered stone and surrounded by towering pine trees. As they approached, Elena could feel something different about the place, a sense of holiness that seemed to emanate from the very walls. This chapel has stood for over 200 years, Azriel explained as they climbed the stone steps. It was built by a priest who had divine visions, constructed according to specifications he received in dreams. The boundary between realms is particularly thin here. Inside, the chapel was simple but beautiful, with worn wooden pews and stained glass windows that cast jeweled light across the floor. At the front, near the altar, the air seemed to shimmer slightly, as though heat waves were rising from invisible fire. That's where you'll speak with him, Azriel said, indicating the shimmering space. Are you ready? Elena's hands were trembling, but she nodded. For 3 years she had dreamed of this moment, and now that it was here, she felt both terrified and desperately hopeful. Azriel began to speak in a language that wasn't quite sound, words that seemed to resonate in the air itself and somehow bypass Elena's ears to speak directly to her soul. The shimmer near the altar grew brighter, more substantial, until a figure began to form within it. And then Marcus was there. He looked exactly as Elena remembered him, tall and lanky at 23, with the same dark hair and warm brown eyes they had inherited from their father. He wore the clothes he had died in, but they were somehow transformed, free of any trace of the accident that had claimed his life. Most importantly, his face radiated a peace and joy that took Elena's breath away. Elena, he said, and his voice was exactly the same, warm with love and tinged with the gentle humor that had defined him in life. My beautiful sister. Elena couldn't speak. She could only stare at him, drinking in the reality of his presence, the impossible gift of seeing him whole and happy and very much himself. Oh, sweetheart, Marcus said, his expression growing tender as he saw her tears. You look so tired. You've been carrying so much pain. Marcus, Elena finally managed to whisper. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry I couldn't save you. Elena, no. Marcus stepped closer, his form becoming more solid, more present. You have nothing to apologize for. Nothing. Do you hear me? But I was driving. I was supposed to protect you. If I had been more careful. If you had been more careful, we both would have died, Marcus interrupted firmly. That drunk driver was traveling at 80 miles per hour, Elena. He ran a red light going 80 miles per hour. There was literally nothing you could have done to prevent what happened. Elena shook her head, old patterns of guilt asserting themselves even in the face of her brother's presence. But maybe if I had taken a different route, or left 5 minutes earlier or later. Elena, listen to me. Marcus's voice carried an authority she had never heard from him in life, a wisdom that spoke of understanding beyond mortal comprehension. What happened that night was not random. It was not a punishment or a mistake. My time on earth was complete. I had learned what I came here to learn, loved who I came here to love, fulfilled the purpose I was given. But you were only 23. You had your whole life ahead of you. I had the exact amount of life I was meant to have, Marcus said gently. Every soul comes to earth with a predetermined span, Elena. Some are meant for 9 decades, others for 9 years, still others for 9 days. The length of a life doesn't determine its value or meaning. Elena felt something inside her chest beginning to crack, not breaking, but opening, like ice beginning to thaw after a long winter. I loved my life, Marcus continued. Every single day of it. I got to grow up with the best sister anyone could ask for. I got to experience friendship and adventure and the joy of making people laugh. I got to feel the sun on my face and eat pizza at midnight and stay up all night talking with you about everything and nothing. That's not a life cut short, Elena. That's a life fully lived. But what about all the things you'll never get to do? Marriage, children, a career. What about all the things I did get to do? Marcus countered. What about the time you taught me to ride a bike, even though you were only 7 yourself? What about the way we used to build blanket forts and tell ghost stories? What about graduation day, when you cried harder than Mom did because you were so proud of me? Elena was sobbing now, remembering those moments with a clarity that cut through years of guilt-distorted memories. I got to experience love, Elena. Pure, unconditional, sibling love that will last for eternity. I got to be your little brother, to have you as my champion and protector and best friend. That's not a tragedy, that's a gift beyond measure. I miss you so much, Elena whispered. Every day, I miss you. I know you do. And that missing is love, Elena. It's proof that our connection transcends physical death. I miss you too, miss talking with you, miss your laugh, miss the way you always knew exactly what to say when I was worried about something. Then why did you have to go? Marcus smiled, and in that expression, Elena saw echoes of the boy he had been and glimpses of the eternal being he had become. Because my work there was finished, and my work here was just beginning. Elena, I've been able to help so many souls transition from life to death because I understand what it feels like to leave people you love behind. I've comforted parents who lost children, spouses who lost partners, friends who lost friends. My death wasn't meaningless, it gave me a ministry I could never have had while alive. Elena felt her worldview shifting, expanding to accommodate this new understanding of purpose and divine plan. But your guilt has been interfering with that work, Marcus continued, his expression growing serious. Every day you spend blaming yourself for my death sends ripples of pain into the spiritual realm. Your anguish has been keeping me tied to earthly concerns when I should be free to serve in higher capacities. I don't understand. Love connects souls across all realms, Elena. When you suffer, I feel it. When you cry yourself to sleep, I want to comfort you. When you talk about joining me, I want to shake you and tell you how wrong you are. Your pain has been preventing me from moving forward in my spiritual journey. Elena felt a crushing weight of new guilt settling over her. So I've been hurting you even after death? No, Marcus said firmly. You've been loving me after death. But Elena, the greatest gift you could give me now would be to forgive yourself, to find peace, to live the full and joyful life you're meant to live. Let me be proud of my sister again. Let me see you happy. Elena looked into her brother's eyes and saw only love, no blame, no resentment, no anger about the accident or her survival. Just pure, unconditional love and a desperate desire for her happiness. I don't know how, she admitted. I don't know how to stop feeling guilty, how to stop wishing it had been me instead. Start by accepting the truth about that night, Marcus said. Accept that it was not your fault. Accept that your survival was not an accident, but a divine decision. Accept that I am at peace, that I am happy, that I am exactly where I'm meant to be. And then live, Elena. Really live. Not just existing from day to day, but embracing all the joy and love and adventure that life has to offer. Fall in love, travel, write the children's book you always talked about, adopt that dog you've been wanting. Do all the things that will make you happy, and let my love be a source of strength rather than sorrow. Elena felt something fundamental shifting inside her, as though a knot that had been tied around her heart for 3 years was finally beginning to loosen. Can you forgive me? She asked. For blaming myself, for wasting so much time on guilt instead of honoring your memory? There's nothing to forgive, Marcus said, stepping close enough that she could almost feel his presence like a warm embrace. You grieved because you loved me. That's human, Elena. That's beautiful. But now it's time to let that grief transform into something that serves both of us better. I love you, Marcus. I will always love you. I love you too, sister mine. More than words can express. And I will be waiting for you when your time comes, not for decades yet, I hope, to welcome you home and hear all about the amazing life you lived. The shimmer around Marcus began to fade, and Elena realized their time was ending. Wait, she said urgently. Will I be able to talk to you again? When you really need to, you'll find a way, Marcus said with a smile. But Elena, you don't need me to guide your life anymore. You have everything you need inside you, plus a guardian angel who cares about you more than he probably should. He looked toward Azriel, who had remained silently respectful throughout the reunion. Thank you for watching over her. Take care of my sister. Always, Azriel replied solemnly. Marcus turned back to Elena one last time. Be happy, Elena. That's all I've ever wanted for you. Be gloriously, completely, unapologetically happy. And then he was gone, leaving only the lingering sense of peace and the echo of unconditional love. Elena stood in the shimmering space for several minutes, tears streaming down her face, but for the first time in 3 years they weren't tears of guilt or despair. They were tears of release, of healing, of a grief that was finally beginning to transform into something that honored rather than destroyed. Azriel approached quietly and wrapped his arms around her, his divine presence surrounding her with comfort and strength. How do you feel? He asked gently. Elena considered the question carefully. Different, she said finally. Lighter. Like I've been carrying 100-pound weight that I didn't realize I could put down. The guilt? It's still there, but it's... Elena searched for the right words. It's smaller. Quieter. For the first time, I can actually believe that maybe the accident wasn't my fault. It wasn't your fault, Azriel said firmly. It never was. Elena pulled back to look at him, studying the face that had become so dear to her over the past few weeks. Marcus was right about you, wasn't he? You do care about me more than you probably should. Azriel's expression grew tender. I care about you exactly as much as my heart demands, regardless of what heavenly protocol might suggest. Elena felt her own heart flutter at his words. Over the weeks they had spent together, her feelings for Azriel had deepened beyond gratitude or dependence. She had fallen in love with his gentleness, his wisdom, his unwavering belief in her worth. Most remarkably, she had begun to believe that he might feel the same way about her. What happens now? She asked. With us, I mean. Now that I'm beginning to heal, will you have to return to heaven? That depends on what you want, Azriel said carefully. My original assignment was to save you from the darkness. That mission is nearly complete. You're choosing life over despair, hope over guilt. Technically, my work here is finished. But I don't want to leave you, Elena. What I feel for you has grown beyond guardian duty into something I never expected to experience. If you'll have me, I want to stay and build a life with you in this realm. Elena's breath caught. Is that possible? Can angels choose to remain on Earth? It's been done before, though rarely. It requires surrendering certain aspects of my divine nature, accepting human limitations like mortality and physical vulnerability. I would still retain some of my angelic abilities, but I would essentially become human for love of a human. That's an enormous sacrifice, Elena said, awed by the magnitude of what he was offering. It would be a transformation, not a sacrifice, Azriel corrected gently. Elena, in these weeks with you, I've discovered that love, real, deep, personal love, gives meaning to existence in ways that perfect divine harmony cannot. You've taught me about courage, about the beauty of imperfection, about the incredible strength it takes to choose hope when everything seems hopeless. Elena cupped his face in her hands, marveling at the warmth of his skin, the reality of his presence. Are you saying you want to become human for me? I'm saying I want to become human with you. I want to experience a lifetime together, marriage, perhaps children if that's possible for our union, growing old together, facing whatever challenges and joys life brings. I want to love you with human intensity and divine devotion combined. Tears sprang to Elena's eyes again, but these were tears of pure joy. Yes, she whispered. Yes to all of it. I love you, Azriel. I want to build a life with you too. He kissed her then, and Elena felt divine light flowing between them, sealing a bond that transcended the boundaries between heaven and earth. In that moment, she understood that this was what Marcus had meant about letting love be a source of strength. This love didn't diminish her memory of her brother. It honored it by showing her that she was worthy of happiness, worthy of being cherished, worthy of a future filled with hope. 6 months later, Elena stood in the garden behind the same mountain chapel where she had spoken with Marcus, wearing a simple white dress and holding a bouquet of daisies, Marcus's favorite flowers. Asriel stood waiting for her at an altar decorated with white roses and trailing ivy, his silver hair catching the afternoon sunlight, his eyes bright with love and anticipation. The wedding was small and intimate, attended by Elena's closest friends and colleagues, her parents, who had flown in from across the country, and a handful of beings that appeared human but radiated the same otherworldly peace as Asriel. Elena suspected they were angels who had been granted permission to witness this unprecedented union between divine and mortal love. As Elena walked down the petal-strewn aisle, she felt Marcus's presence like a gentle blessing, his approval and joy surrounding her like invisible arms. She had kept her promise to him. She was living, really living, embracing happiness without guilt or reservation. The ceremony was conducted by Father Michael, the elderly priest who tended the chapel, and who had accepted Asriel's true nature with the faith-driven equanimity of someone who had spent decades in service to the divine. His words spoke of love that transcended realms, of the sacred nature of commitment, of two souls choosing to journey together through whatever earthly experiences awaited them. When Asriel spoke his vows, his voice carried harmonics that made the air itself seem to sing. "Elena, you taught me that love is not weakness but the greatest strength in any realm. You showed me that imperfection doesn't diminish beauty, it makes it more precious. I promise to love you with both human passion and angelic devotion, to stand by you through joy and sorrow, to choose you every day for as long as this mortal life lasts and beyond." Elena's own vows came from a heart that had learned to hope again. "Asriel, you found me in my darkest hour and showed me that I was worthy of divine love. You helped me transform grief into gratitude, guilt into grace. I promise to love you fearlessly, to trust in the strength of what we've built together, to create a life that honors both the miracle of your love and the memory of those who brought us together." When Father Michael pronounced them husband and wife, the chapel bells began to ring on their own, their celestial music echoing across the mountains like a song of celebration from heaven itself. That evening, at their reception in the church hall, Elena stood to make a toast. She raised her glass of champagne and looked out at the faces of everyone she loved, her heart full to overflowing. 3 years ago, I believed I was beyond saving, she began, her voice clear and strong. I thought I was broken in ways that could never be healed. I was wrong. Love found me in the darkness and led me back to the light. Not just Asriel's love, though that has been the greatest gift of my life, but the love of friends who never gave up on me, family who supported me through the worst of times, and the eternal love of a brother who is still watching over me. She looked toward the empty chair they had left for Marcus, decorated with daisies and his photograph. "Marcus, I know you're here celebrating with us. Thank you for sending me the perfect guardian angel. Thank you for teaching me that love is stronger than death, that joy can coexist with remembrance, that healing doesn't mean forgetting." Elena turned to Asriel, who stood beside her with his hand on her waist, his expression radiant with happiness. "And Asriel, thank you for seeing worth in me when I couldn't see it in myself. Thank you for choosing love over duty, earth over heaven, a messy human life over perfect divine harmony. Thank you for showing me that some miracles are worth believing in." As the celebration continued around them, Elena and Asriel stepped out onto the chapel's stone terrace, looking up at a sky full of stars. In the distance, they could hear laughter and music from their reception, but for the moment, they were content to simply hold each other and marvel at the journey that had brought them to this point. "Do you have any regrets?" Elena asked softly. "About giving up your immortality, your place in heaven?" Asriel considered the question seriously, then shook his head. "How can I regret choosing love? Heaven will always exist, Elena. But this moment, this life with you, is unique and precious precisely because it's temporary. Every day we have together is a gift to be treasured. Even when I'm old and gray and cranky?" "Especially then," Asriel said with a laugh. I can't wait to see you grow into all the versions of yourself you'll become. I want to experience every season of life with you." Elena leaned into his embrace, feeling safer and more loved than she had ever thought possible. "I love you, my guardian angel. I love you too, my brave and beautiful wife." Above them, the stars seemed to shine a little brighter, as though heaven itself was blessing their union. And in Elena's heart, where darkness had once reigned supreme, there was now only light, hope, and the unshakable knowledge that she was exactly where she belonged. The teacher who had once believed herself unworthy of love had learned the greatest lesson of all: that divine grace can transform any heart, that healing is always possible, and that sometimes the most broken souls are simply being prepared for the most beautiful love stories. Elena and Azriel walked back into their reception, hand in hand, ready to begin their human adventure together, surrounded by love, blessed by heaven, and carrying with them the eternal truth that some miracles are worth every risk, every sacrifice, every leap of faith. Their love story had begun with an assignment to save a soul in darkness. It had become a testament to the transformative power of divine love made manifest in human hearts. And it would continue for all the days of their mortal lives, a living prayer of gratitude for the God who sends angels to guard our hearts and sometimes allows them to stay and love us forever.